Welcome to a compilation of every single episode of the entire plot of Throne of Glass. This is going to be a compilation of my pre-existing videos that I have broken up into smaller parts. If you'd rather watch it in smaller parts, I will link those in the description below. And I will also give you a warning that when I first started this series, it was just an idea. I also did not have the best equipment or setup yet, so I apologize in advance for any bad visual or sound quality, and I can assure you that it gets better throughout the series. So by all means, here is an unhinged deep dive of everything that happens from chapter 1 to the end of Throne of Glass, with no spoilers for future books in the series. We start with a girl named Calaine Sardothian. She is in a prison camp called Endovir, where she's working in the salt mines. We find out off the bat, like in the first page, that she's the most notorious assassin in Adarlan. Adarlan is where most of this is going to be taking place. Also, I'm going to insert this here. There are so many different pronunciation arguments online. I'm going to pronounce things how I pronounce them. If you disagree with how I pronounce it, I am so sorry. So we find out in the very first paragraph that this Elena chick is not someone that you want to mess with. Not just because she's the most notorious assassin, but she literally has 6+ additional guards on her than any other prisoner in this salt mine prison camp. Things get interesting though because she's actually being escorted somewhere by a different person who is not a guard. He is a cloaked figure, and she ends up overhearing that his name is Cale Westfall, and he is captain of the Royal Guard. This actually really makes her tense, but we don't know why yet. We'll figure out in just a minute. So this cloaked guy and his posse of guards are taking her somewhere. She has no clue where. And all this girl can think about is how she's basically going to outsmart him and unalive all of these people and get out of Dodge. She also gives us some insight into some of the prisoners that are in Endovir. It is full of criminals, poor people, and foreigners, mostly from a country called Eelway, and it is one of the only countries left that is giving Adarlan any pushback. We'll learn more about the politics in a second, but those are two countries that you really need to know, especially in this book. Adarlan, which is where most of this book is going to take place, and Eelway, which is basically just a thorn in Adarlan's side. And the other people that you'll find in this prison are people who have been accused of practicing magic. Sounds a lot like Merlin, if you've ever seen that show. Kind of the idea. So this is especially interesting because off the bat, Calaine tells us that she used to have magic, but then magic entirely disappeared from the Adarlan kingdom. Like, just disappeared. No one knows why. It just went away. And if you're curious, keep that curiosity, because Sarah J. Maas is not going to tell you why. You have to really stick around to figure that one out. Anyways, so on Calaine and Cole's very, very long walk, she's basically come to the conclusion that she's going to be executed for all of her assassin-related crimes until they finally get to their destination. And she sees a room full of guards, and they're like the royal guards. These are the best of the best. And then she finally notices him, the Prince of Adarlan, right there. One of my favorite characters in this entire series. Anyways, so at this point, Cale has taken off his hood, and she's like, somebody grab me a glass of water because he's actually kind of cute. Also, I think the art speaks for itself. So off the bat, homegirl's ready to just cause some drama. She refuses to bow. So everyone comes in and bows to the prince, and then she refuses to bow. Then this super frustrating, annoying guy that you will very quickly learn to hate if this situation doesn't make you hate him already. He literally like kapows her to the ground, like to force her to bow. But then Prince Dorian is like, dude, that kind of defeats the purpose. You're supposed to bow out of respect, and she clearly doesn't respect me, so she doesn't actually have to bow. Good answer. Let me just say right now, I cannot say his last name. Prince Dorian Haviliard. I've always said Haviliard. Haviliard. I say it differently every single time, realistically. And then from the mouth of our girl Calaine, princes are not supposed to be handsome. They're sniveling, stupid, repulsive creatures. This one, how unfair of him to be royal and beautiful. Could not have said it better myself. So now this next part, I feel like a lot of people really glaze over, but I would challenge you to really pay attention to this. It feels like a really random time for them to do this in the story, but we're gonna learn about her eyes. One might think her eyes blue or gray, perhaps even green. Up close though, these wearing hues were offset by the brilliant ring of gold around her pupils. And basically we just learned that she's a very stunning girl, and she knows it. So if Calaine didn't already seem tough enough to you based off just her demeanor and the sheer audacity of them to like triple her guardage, Dorian reveals that she has actually been slaving away in this prison camp for a whole year. This is especially wild because the life expectancy at this prison camp is 1 month. People literally work to death within a month of being sent to this prison camp, and she has lived there for a year. And this part's really sad, but we also learn that 4 months into her captivity, she did try to run away. And in trying to run away, she killed 24 guards, and she got an inch within the wall before getting caught and brought back to the prison camp. The part about this that's really sad is that the king of Adarlan, aka Dorian's daddy, demanded that she not be killed. He wanted to draw out her pain as much as possible because the king hates Elena, and we'll learn a little bit more about that later. She knew that the chances of getting killed because she escaped were very high. So it was basically her trying to get unalived because it was so unbearable. And that is very sad and heartbreaking, and I hate that part. The prince asks if she has any scars, and she's like, dude, I've lived in a prison camp for a year. Of course I have scars. So they have her turn around. Turns out she has a bunch of scars on her back, but she mostly has like these 3 really huge scars on her back. And Dorian's all like, oh, that's fine. The dresses are gonna cover them up. The dresses? Turns out the prince came to see her because he has a special proposition in mind. Chapter 3. Dorian dismisses all of the guards from this room, so it is just him, Cale, and Selena. So here's the proposition. He needs a champion. Not necessarily him exactly, but his dad, the king, needs a champion. Basically an assassin to do all of his dirty work behind the scenes so he can keep his hands clean. Dorian tells Selena that if she serves the king, this horrible, horrible man, you'll find out, in this capacity for 6 years, he will completely erase her sentence and she can live a free life. Now, let me take a minute to explain to you, this is a very corrupt king. Like, he really sucks. He goes against everything Selena believes in, and although she's an assassin, you will find that she actually does have like a really strong like moral compass. Despite being an assassin, that's kind of hard to explain, but you'll get to know it over the books. You'll get to understand it. Here's kind of the issue. Selena wants her freedom, but in order to get this freedom, she has to serve one of the most corrupt kings in existence. And also, he's committed like every war crime in the book, and she would quite literally be doing that for him now. So she's thinking about it and she's weighing the odds, and then Dorian's like, oh, but here's the thing, you're not actually being offered the job. You have to compete for it. Turns out, not only Dorian, but many other men in this Adarlan kingdom are searching high and wide for different assassins and soldiers and warriors, placing them into a competition to become this champion. All of these are people who are basically being offered the same thing as her. Serve in a certain capacity for so long and then you can have your freedom. And if that wasn't already quite the catch, there's another catch. See, the thing is, when the most notorious assassin was caught and put in prison, she was a teenager. Now she's 18, but she was 17 at the time. And a lot of the things that she did, she was like 16 and 17 when she did them. So when Selena Sardothian was captured, everyone wanted to know the 411. The king was like, oh yeah, it was this woman who blah blah blah. He did not mention that she was a teenage girl, because how humiliating would that be? I love it. I love it so much. So she can't go into the competition as herself because then it would give away that the king lied. So she's going in with like an alias, basically. They negotiate a little bit because Selena's not going to just accept this, and she basically negotiates down to 4 years. She is confident. She's like, clearly I'm going to win this. I'll do your competition, but only if I get released in 4 years instead of 6. And she can tell that the prince like really, really wants her to be his champion, so naturally he agrees. Chapter 4. Selena is getting bathed and she's getting sleep in a real bed for the first night in a year. She also has her chains removed for the first time in a year, and it's so sad because she like feels like she's missing a limb because she's so used to just having them on her person. She also looks at herself in the mirror for the first time in a year. Honestly, this chapter is so unnecessarily emotional for me, especially rereading it. But she's basically been starved for a year and she has skin and bones, and she's like, okay, I still have the brain and the personality of the most notorious assassin in the world, but I definitely am out of shape and I don't have the muscles for it anymore. So she's realizing like, oh yeah, I can totally do this, but we've got a lot of work to do. So she finally sleeps in a bed, except for when Cale comes to pick her up the next morning and like escort her to the Adarlan kingdom. She's sleeping on the floor because the bed was too comfortable. She couldn't sleep. And something about that just like really just rips at your heartstrings. Anyways, the kingdom of Adarlan is not actually close to Endovir. It's a multiple days trip. They're packing up to go, and Calaine sees sunlight for the first time in a year. And she's just like re-experiencing Earth again, and it's honestly really tender. This is also the chapter we find out Calaine is a little bit of a material girl, and when she was an assassin, she made a lot of money. I guess it's a very lucrative field, and she had a lot of nice things, and she's a sucker for nice things, and she's really excited to stay in the castle for a little bit to not only show up all of these other people that she's clearly still the best at what she does, but also because she's gonna get a lot of nice things. And then there's like someone there, I guess, who does like her hair and makes her all pretty, because when she's traveling with like the royal people, she needs to look presentable. And she's like, I still got it. Although as they're packing up and starting to head out, Calaine starts to get a lot of survivor's guilt because she actually really grew to love the people of Ilwe and all of the people who were at this camp. She even talks about how, for example, whenever she would get hurt, there were some older Elway people. I guess Elway people. But there would be like a sweet older Elway lady who would then heal all of her lacerations that she got from being tortured and whipped, and like in turn the lady would get punished for like trying to help and heal her, but like she gets survivor's guilt basically, and it's very sad, but it's understandable. Another thing we find out is that Calaine is a dog person. Not relevant right now, but it's going to be relevant like halfway through the book, so might as well just tell you now. So Calaine, Cole, and Dorian hit the road officially. Calaine is put back in shackles by Cale, which low-key makes sense because they barely hit the road and she's already fantasizing of all the different ways that she could murder them all and escape on their way to the kingdom, so that's fun. And through some snotty comedic banter, we find out officially that Calaine is 18, like I said earlier, but then we also find out that Cale is 22, which is very young for being captain of the guard. This is also where we find out that Cale is technically a lord, but he doesn't like to talk about it, and it's a very sensitive topic. So naturally, Calaine decides to just pester him about it for like half a day's ride. So then they stop for lunch, I guess, in like Oakwald Forest. And this forest has like a bunch of creepy lore from like a long forgotten and abandoned witch kingdom used to live in the woods or like hide and lurk around in the woods. And then Calaine also uses that time to let them all know like, oh yeah, I've come face to face with one before and I killed her. She's scary. Like, I love her, but she is scary. Anyway, so on their lunch, Calaine is just observing her surroundings, and she notices a couple things. Prince Dorian is super tense around Duke Parrington. Remember, Duke Parrington's the one who, like, kind of kapowed her down to, like, force her to bow? Very clearly off the bat, we know that Dorian just does not like Duke Parrington, but he is around. And the forest was different, or at least this specific area of the forest is different. Now here I'm going to introduce Calaine Truth Bombs. Randomly throughout chapters in her like inner dialogue, she just like drops some like huge facts about just who she is as a person and some backstory. So Calaine was found frozen almost to death at a river outside of Terrasen. Terrasen was another kingdom that Adarlan squashed in the king's conquest to just like conquer the world. So she was found in this frozen river, almost dead, by a man named Arabin Hommel. Arabin was the owner of the Assassin's Keep, which is basically just like Hogwarts for assassins. Like, he pulls in a bunch of young people, teaches them the brutal art of assassins, gives them clients and jobs, and then in turn takes a lot of the money that they make from those assassination jobs to basically pay off all the training he's done for them. It's like a whole system, I guess. He's literally started like this assassin school that's obviously super low-key and like secret, but everyone knows it exists. Everyone knows who he is, but no one knows like where he's at or what's going on. He also has like so many important people wrapped around his finger that no one really can do anything about it either. But that's all stuff we'll get into another day. So when he found her, he brought her to the Assassin's Keep and basically turned her into a lethal weapon. And he pretty much made her into the assassin that she was. Except for the morals part, he didn't really have a lot of those, but she did, for reasons to be discussed in Assassin's Blade. Basically, she talks about how pretty much since she was found at the river, she's never gone back to Terrasen. I mean, the kingdom doesn't really exist anymore. It was conquered by the king of Adarlan, which is sad. Anywho, so while we're sitting down and enjoying our lunch, all the nobility and the guards also start to pick up that the forest around them is kind of different. It's kind of spooking them all out a little bit. And luckily for them, our girl Selena was there to educate them and tell them that this was Brandon's forest. And it used to be full of fae and magic. That is until magic disappeared mysteriously. Keep that curiosity. But what we do know about all this, I guess, is that the king does consider magic extremely evil. That also kind of explains why a lot of people who were accused of practicing magic, even though magic wasn't even in existence anymore, they're sent to these prison camps. And then we also find out that this evil king, Adarlan, as if he wasn't already pleasant enough, his main objective in life is not only to eliminate magic all over the world, but to also colonize the world. What a great guy. What a pleasant dude. And then Selena drops another truth bomb on us. Before magic disappeared, Selena had magic. We don't know what that magic is. We just know that she had it, but then when magic disappeared, she just lost that part of herself. But of course, she's only shared that with the readers in like her thoughts, but she hasn't told anyone. So they stop and set up camp for the night. There's kind of like this weird thing, and it's honestly kind of hard to describe, but for some reason she just knows that there's like little fairies around, and there was even like little tiny fairy footprints and all of that like outside of her tent, and she doesn't want any of the guards of this evil king who basically hates magic to know, because she's like, what if they do something about it? So she like hides the evidence that the fairies were there, but she's looking out for her little magic folk, and I love it. Chapter 6. Here's what's insane. We find out that it is 2 weeks later. It took them 2 weeks of daily travel to get all the way back to the kingdom of Adarlan. Like that's not really relevant to the story, but for some reason that just really baffles me, and something about that just really bothers me for no reason. So on the final stretch, Cale and Selena are talking, and you'll just learn off the bat that whenever they do talk, like it's always bickering. Like Cale has some sort of righteous superiority over her because he's a man of morals and he fights for the king, and she's an assassin. He just starts asking her about like when she got caught basically and brought to Endovir about a year ago, and she actually reveals that she has no idea who turned her in. She doesn't know what went wrong, how she got to the salt mines. Obviously, like, she knows what went wrong, but she doesn't know how she ended up in prison. But basically, a job went very wrong, and we're gonna learn all about that job in Assassin's Blade. But for now, you don't know what the job is, and honestly, it's for the best. It will have more of an emotional impact on you later if you read Assassin's Blade later. And honestly, I'm not gonna go way too deep into why you shouldn't read Assassin's Blade first. If you really want to know why, watch this video. I give all the reasons why I think you should not read Assassin's Blade first, so just go watch that if you want to hear more, because I'm not going to talk about that here. So I guess Cale decides it's a really great time to start asking Selena about how traumatic life was in the salt mines. Great conversation starter, I guess. And she shares a bunch of the gory details, and then he starts feeling sympathetic and bad for her. Wow, human emotion. Good morning. Did you have a nice nap? Oh, I love you. While we're being surprised at Cale's current actions, Dorian catches himself throwing some glances at Selena, and he's starting to realize, like, all bathed and stuff, she's kind of a babe. Ooh, do you smell a love triangle coming? You would be correct. But no, it's gotta build up, it's gotta be a slow burn, so hold your horses, we'll get there. And then they finally get to, like, the clearing where they can see the castle in the distance. You can imagine it in your brain, I'm sure. And the castle is made of glass. 100% glass. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised. The series is called Throne of Glass. And yes, the throne is made of glass. Honestly, they should have called this Castle of Glass. That doesn't sound as good though. But I think that's far more impressive than a throne of glass. Chapter 7. So we finally make it to that final stretch, and we're like in the gates of the castle. Mind you, Selena has been disguised to look like a lady of the court, so naturally there's like a bunch of ladies who are, you know, welcoming the prince back to the kingdom, and they're like, who's she? This is also where we find out that Dorian's a little bit of a heartbreaker, and he's got a lot of fans with the ladies, so the jealousy is very, very high currently. And now for another Selena truth bomb. I guess in the distance she sees a bunch of slaves like working at the docks as they're walking into the castle, and she's getting her survivor's guilt again. But then she makes like this comment in her inner monologue about how she saved 200 slaves from the pirate king. Don't worry about it, we'll get there with Assassin's Blade. but we're getting little hints of like, oh, you may be an assassin, like you unalive people for money, like that's not exactly a noble thing, but we're finding that she actually does have some really strong morals. So it makes you start to wonder like, okay, there's a lot of like oxymorons going on right now. Is that the word? There's a lot of irony going on right now. We'll stick to that one because I know what that means. There's a lot of irony going on right now, and it makes you want to get to know her a little bit more. Like, how can both these things be true? So they're going up to the stone castle, and it's starting to make Calaine a little queasy because she's like, absolutely not. I'm not staying in something where literally if one like tiny like square foot section of that gets shattered, like that whole thing is coming down. So thankfully there is a stone castle off to the side, and she's going to be staying in the stone castle. So in case you were worried. We also find out that the competition starts tomorrow, so she has quite literally no time to prepare. Like, she's fresh out the salt mines, fresh out of a prison camp, and she's gotta like be performing at peak performance tomorrow. So of course the first thing she does is brainstorm all the ways that she could escape. But apparently Cole's already had her entire room surrounded with guards. Even like there's like a balcony out of her rooms, and there's even guards with like crossbows at the bottom of her balcony. She's not getting anywhere. So naturally she makes a bunch of DIY weapons using some stuff that's just like sitting around the room because she's a resourceful lady. And she gets like one of those whole like 1990s makeover montages. And this is also where we meet Philippa. I love Philippa. There's not really any art out there for Philippa because she's such a small character, but she's so underrated and I absolutely love her. She is just the sweet old lady servant maid who's been assigned to take care of Selena. Something off the bat is that she is so bossy with Selena. Like, she does not take anything. She's like, let me tell you how it's gonna be. And Selena's like, if you knew who I was, you wouldn't be talking to me like that. And Philippa's like, I know who you are. You're Selena Sardothian. You're the most notorious assassin, but I am in charge of you, so we're gonna do this my way. And I just have mad respect for Philippa. She's just, I love her. I love her so much. And now, for the first time in this book, we're gonna jump POVs. Short little lesson for you. POV means points of view. So if I say we're jumping into someone's POV, it means that we are jumping out of Selena's storyline and we are jumping into a different character storyline. So in this case, we're gonna be jumping to Prince Dorian's POV. So he's with his mother and his father, aka the king and queen, and his dad is ticked off because apparently he did not get daddy's permission to go get Selena Sardothian, and his father hates Selena Sardothian. And he takes the time to be like, oh, well, there's so many good champions like Cain, and you'll learn who Cain is in a second and you'll hate him too. You've just sentenced her to die. Whatever. So we find out that Cain is Duke Parrington's champion. So the really annoying guy who kapow, bow to the prince. That guy who literally no one likes. Yeah, he has a champion in this little competition, and that champion's name is Cain. And apparently Cain seems to be the most promising winner because he's some super jack dude from the Fang Mountains, and he's a warrior and whatever. So then I guess his mother decides to change the conversation. She's like, you should consider marrying a lady, because what else do queens talk about with their sons, I guess. And I don't know why that's relevant or why I even shared that, but I guess it happens in the chapter. Because Dorian just goes straight back at his dad and is basically like, I think that your plans to colonize all of the eastern countries is a really bad idea. His dad is like, you can't talk to me like that. And then Dorian's all like, stop trying to play God and just like be content with the kingdom that you have and maybe try being a morally sound leader. And his dad is like, excuse me? And then that's kind of where the chapter ends. It does tell us a lot about Dorian. We're finding that although his father is like a horrible king, Dorian himself is not a bad guy. Not fully justified in all of his actions for sure, but definitely compared to his father, like he's making a lot better decisions. And now for chapter 8. Selena, obviously being escorted by Cale and a couple other guards, they're just like exploring the stone castle. And in their little banter, we learn that Holland, who is basically Dorian's little brother, he's like a little demon child. Like, he's actually the worst. Like, he's done horrible things. Like, he is gnarly, just evil. And like, people are so terrified that if he ever became king, like he would be worse than his father. I think they mentioned that Holland's like 8 years old, so the fact that he's like already expected to be that evil of a ruler and he's only like 8 years old is kind of like a lot. And I just think it's funny to mention, realistically, it does not play a role in any of the Throne of Glass books. Like, I honestly don't know why it's in here, but you know, it just gives us a well-rounded view of why it's so important for Dorian to get married and have kids, I guess. So they run into this clock tower made of black stone in the gardens of the castle. And it has like all these like stone gargoyles around the clock faces of the clock tower. And all we know is that it's really weird and spooky, and that the king had it put up like a couple years ago, and that it was all made around the time that Dorian was born. So by a couple years, I mean like 18, 19 years. Something else about this clock tower that's really important is that Calaine notices that there's a bunch of really weird like symbols and markings engraved into the stone all around this clock tower. She has no clue what they mean. She asks Cole, dang it, his name is Cale. I apologize. I'm probably gonna call him Cole a couple times because I called him Cole for a really long time and then someone corrected me, and it is Cale, but I still say it wrong sometimes. So Cale also has no idea what these markings are, and he assumes they're just for decoration. They move on. So back in the castle, we find the library. And if you didn't already love Calaine enough, you learn that she loves to read and she loves books and she loves the library. So all the more reason to love her. And she's obsessed with this library because not only is it beautiful and it has like all the books she could ever want, it has over 2 million books in it. So she wants to read the books, but Cale's a jerk and he's just like, you're an assassin. What do you know about reading? Why you enjoy reading? I thought you just enjoyed killing people. Like, first of all, jerk. Second of all, she's like, of course I love to read. Like, I'm actually a really smart person. And then he's like, oh, well, this is for people of the court and you're not a person of the court, even if we're telling people that you're a person of the court. Which is also dumb because literally in the same breath, he also admits that reading is out of style and no one in the kingdom is even reading these books. They're just all kind of sitting there and he won't let her read them just because of some prejudice he has against her. We love that. That's awesome. So she does what any smart girl would do, and she goes back to her room and she gets a paper and pen and she decides to write a letter to our one and only Prince Dorian. And she basically scolds him for having a huge library that no one uses and says that it is practically his duty to make sure that those books are well loved and read, so she should be able to rent some books from the library. Dorian surprisingly not only gives her permission to get books, but also sends over some copies of his favorite books. And then basically says, yeah, you can read any of the books in my library, but you have to read these first because I really would like someone to talk about with them. So we basically find out that Dorian's a reader too. Tiniest little detail, but in his letters, he addresses her, my truest assassin. And something about that is just, that's just cute. So naturally, she reads really late into the night and then wakes up the next morning at noon. I will remind you that it's the first day of the competition and she stayed up late to read and slept in like a crazy amount. So then she decides to like go out on the balcony, I guess while like Philippa's preparing a bath for her to like get her ready for the day, and she overhears some ladies of the court and they're just like gossiping or whatever, and they bring her up. They're like, oh, did you see that one girl that like came in with Dorian and like his posse? He's been away for so long and he comes back and he brings this girl with him, and one of the girls that we'll find out who she is in just a minute, but she's like, I hear that she's the prince's harlot. And Calaine is like, absolutely not. So she takes a flower pot from her balcony and literally like and launches it, and it almost lands on this girl, but she did that on purpose because she was like, I think that'll be the last time she'll be gossiping about me. Girl, I mean, that's one way to handle your problems. Not the way I would have handled it, but Chapter 9. Calaine gets all dressed up to explore the castle and basically figure out what she needs to know about the competition that's literally starting that day. And Philippa is helping her get ready and basically just informs her, like, I don't know if you know this, but no one knows about this competition. It's actually super hush-hush because obviously the king doesn't want people to know that he's hiring an assassin, but there are literally people in the court who don't even know that a competition's happening. And then Cale comes into the room ticked off and he's like, why are you wearing that? Because I guess she's like in this really cute frilly dress and everything, and she's like, I don't know, like I was just getting ready for the day, whatever, waiting to hear from you. And he was like, well, you need to go meet the king and all the other champions right now. So he's like panicking and he grabs her by the arm and he's just like taking her there. But then something astronomical happens. He stops and he looks at her and he says, you look rather pretty today. This book does things to me. So Calaine finally meets the king, and she's also meeting all of the champions, and what do you guess? Everyone there is a jerk, and everyone there is also a man. She is the only woman present. There are 23 other competitors, and according to what Calaine has noticed, they are all brawn, no brains. So just basically a bunch of really strong warriors who are just
dumb as rocks. Off the bat, she's sized up by everyone because not only is she the only woman there, but she's literally been starved for a year, so she is absolutely insanely thin. And then on top of that, she didn't really know what was going on, and she was gonna explore the castle as a lady of the court, so she was wearing some like cute little frilly gown, and of course they're all wearing like fighting leathers and all of that. A whole lot of inconvenient things. So Selena, of course, is like second guessing everything, but also she's like, well, it was either that or staying at the salt mine, so let's just see what happens. The king announces that the competition is going to be 13 weeks. There's going to be a challenge or a trial once a week where a champion will be eliminated every single week. There will also be surprise trials sprinkled in here and there. And then they're also informed that the trials are deadly and it's highly likely you're gonna die in one of these trials if you don't just lose and get sent home eliminated. And then once there are only 4 champions left, they're going to basically have a dueling tournament, and then whoever wins that becomes the king's champion. Can I help you? Oh, thank you. All right, whew. This is gonna be a long video. So not only will that person become the champion for 6 years, but we already know that Selena's negotiated 4 years instead. And then they will be granted their freedom. And not only that, they're going to be apparently greatly compensated. Our material girl is gonna be getting her bag. So after that lovely meeting, which apparently that was it. Like, there was no trial, it was just kind of meeting everyone. So she still has some time to like get back into shape and all that. They're not just gonna throw her into it like a starved twig. But they start walking back to her rooms and Dorian joins them. And Dorian informs her that her alias is going to be Lady Lillian Gardania, and she's a jewel thief. Selena doesn't really like this, but something you're gonna learn really fast is that she has a lot of pride. So going from like the most notorious assassin, which she's like pretty proud of because she worked really hard to get that status, now she's just gonna be like a silly little jewel thief. And also all the competitors already don't take her seriously enough as it is, so the fact that she then has to have that alias like drives her absolutely insane. As they're going back into the rooms, they run into Lady Calaine. Lady Calaine is the lady that Selena threw a flower pot at earlier today. And she's like the queen of gossip, basically, in the court. She's very obnoxious and she is not a girl's girl, and we find out pretty quickly that she's like obsessed with Dorian. And we also find out that she would literally murder to be his queen. Literally. But that's besides the point. It's almost comedic how obsessed she is with Dorian and how very little interest Dorian is showing in Calaine. Calaine very quickly picks up that not only is Lady Lillian, aka Selena, beautiful, but Dorian seems like really interested and protective of her because she's his champion. But obviously Calaine doesn't know that because no one knows about the competition and she thinks she's just a lady in waiting. And so Calaine's just crazy jealous. Like, it's actually really funny. See, this is why I need you to just read the book, because realistically, if I could just read the book to you from beginning to end, I would. That's how good it is. Like, every detail, phenomenal. This whole interaction, peak comedy. So after a really tense conversation where Calaine's basically doing that thing where she's like complimenting the Lady Lillian, but low-key just trying to make her look bad in front of Dorian, they move on. They're just like, okay, bye. And then they keep walking. And then, plot twist, Cale informs Selena that Calaine is at the court, but she's technically been promised to another. The one and only Duke Parrington, the man we all hate. So even though she's making it her life mission to get Dorian to fall in love with her, she's low-key promised to like another guy. So that's complicated. Chapter 11, it's the next morning and I'm running out of batteries, so we're gonna take a brief intermission. I'm back. Batteries all charged up, let's go. Chapter 11, next morning, Selena gets a rude wake-up call from Cale. What else did we expect? And he's like, hey, by the way, first trials right now. Let's go. Cole sees all the books and he's like super mad off the bat because he was like, it's my job to protect the prince. And not only are you guys like obviously developing like some sort of friendship or relationship here, you're writing him letters and I don't know about it. I'm literally his like protective detail. I should know these things. He's not jealous at all. No, that's definitely not what this is. So anyways, we're officially at the first trial. She shows up to the barracks and all the other champions are out, as well as an insane collection of weapons, which is not really smart in a room of 24 assassin warrior people. And Cole just tells her to like pick any weapon. So naturally she goes for the sword because she's iconic. And Cole's like, all right, let's spar just for some practice. Elena finds out very quickly just how out of shape she is, but she does pick up things fairly quickly while sparring with Cale. So don't worry about it. Even though he's stronger, she's obviously a lot smaller and way quicker than him. They're actually like pretty equally skilled, but he does totally end up like kicking her feet from under her and making her just like, you know, knockout, which she's not happy about because everyone's there watching and they're just really just picking her out as the weak link at this point. It's also one of those things that like, you can tell they can't stand each other, Cale and Selena, but at the same time, like they're both really enjoying the fact that they're finally able to duel with someone who actually is like at their level and they're actually low-key having a really good time with it. Chapter 12, after sparring for a bit, the weapons master comes out and his name is Brolo. I've always said Brolo, so that's what we're gonna stick with. I've heard some people say Brulo. I don't like that. Brolo just kind of rolls off the mouth easier. Anyway, so he reveals that he, in addition to the king, are going to be making the final decisions. So like Brolo and the king are the guys that you really need to impress. So Brolo has all of the champions introduce themselves. And when it gets to Selena, obviously it takes a little hit at her pride because after everyone's introduced themselves, she's like, oh my word, like if I was like, I'm Selena Sardothian, half of these guys would lose their mind and drop out of the competition. But she has to be like,
I'm Lady Lillian, and I'm a spoiled brat who, despite my family being like super rich, I decided to be a jewel thief for fun.
And that's basically like the role they're having her play. And she hates it, but you know, she follows through and she does it. She introduces herself in that way. And obviously this is not helping with the whole weak link accusations, but Cale does kind of like off to the side have like this whisper conversation with her. And he basically tells her like, no one here knows that you're Selena Sardothian except for the king, Dorian, and I. Realistically, if she is good enough to stay in the competition, so not get eliminated, but if she doesn't perform to her full potential, it's not going to be until they're the final four in those last duelings that she can actually reveal who she is. She can use being the weak link to her advantage. Like she can be a secret weapon and she can surprise them all. Like let them underestimate her and kind of fly under the radar and then win the whole thing because of them all assuming nothing I have to worry about. Honestly, genius strategy on Cole's part. So a bunch of the competitors are listed, but there's only really 3 that you need to know. So there's Cain. We've already talked about him. He's Parrington's champion, and he is a trained warrior in the king's army, and he's from the Great Fang Mountain tribe, I think, something like that. Then there's Nox. Nox is actually an assassin who Selena has heard of before, which she actually can't say about any of the other champions, so that's at least saying something. I don't think she says why she's heard his name. We just know that she's heard of him before. And then there's Grave. Grave is like, he's like that one guy from Tangled. Like, he's just like this huge beefy guy you don't mess with. He is also the only of all the 24 champions who is constantly in shackles and escorted by at least 5 prison guards at a time. So he is the brawniest, most brutal looking. This man is an absolute monster. Turns out the first challenge is they're just all gonna go for a run. Probably the easiest of all the trials that they ever do. Doesn't say how long of a run it is, but we know that they're running like a far distance, and whoever can't like run the whole thing, like if they have to stop or anything, like they're just automatically eliminated. So they're just gonna kind of like bulk eliminate the people who are out of shape. And let me remind you, Selena is very out of shape. She runs this race and she remembers to stay in the middle. So she doesn't allow herself to fall back. She doesn't allow herself to lead. She makes sure to stay in the middle, and she is dying inside. But if our girl has anything, it's endurance. So naturally she finishes that race. She like throws up afterwards, but she makes it. And then Cale, who sees her throwing up after the whole thing, because she like, I guess like went into the woods behind the trees so no one else would see her, you know, like to not help with those weak link accusations. But Cale obviously somehow found out that she threw up in the woods, and he's like, you and I are gonna go running every single morning from now on until this competition's over. What a jerk. Chapter 13. Cale and Selena are eating dinner later that day. He's all like, you know, I like to read too. Okay, jealous much? I think we all like to read. So Selena and him go for a walk around the castle, and guess who they run into? The queen of gossip herself, Lady Calaine. But she's actually with a woman that we have not met yet, and Selena immediately identifies her as an Eyllwe woman. Remember, that is the kingdom that is a thorn in Adarlan's side. A lot of the people in the prison camp were Eyllwe people. Yeah, this is a girl from Eyllwe. So not only is she an Eyllwe woman, but she is actually the Eyllwe princess. Now, here's the thing. I pronounce this name very different from everyone else only because I knew someone in my life with this name and they pronounced it very differently. They pronounced it Nehemia. I know everyone pronounces it Nehemia. I'm gonna say Nehemia for you guys, but if I say Nehemiah a couple times, like, I apologize. Another Selena truth bomb. She can speak Eyllwe. What in the world? She greets Nehemia in Eyllwe because she picks up off the bat that she doesn't really know the common tongue very well. And a side note, they always just refer to it as the common tongue. I have no idea what language the people of Adarlan speak. Whenever we talk about other languages, they have a name for those languages. So if I ever say the common tongue, they're speaking whatever they speak in Adarlan. What I love is that Nehemia and Selena like automatically hit it off. Like, their personalities are perfect. And one of the things that they really have in common is how annoying they find Calaine. So Nehemia is just trying to get away from Calaine at this point, who I guess has been tasked in showing her around the castle. But also in the language, Selena asks basically, what are you doing here? And the princess is of course being all diplomatic about like, he's been so gracious and he's invited me here as a guest, but low-key gives away like, I don't know why I'm here, but I definitely have my own agendas for being here. And basically just shares like, she agrees the king is trash and he's literally trying to squash her country in his life mission to just colonize the world. So she's here for very diplomatic reasons that we just are slowly gonna figure out. Nehemia hates it here. The common tongue is not her first language. On top of that, the food is different, the culture's different, everything's different. And Selena is really the only person she's come across that she actually feels comfortable around. So she basically just demands like, this girl's coming with me. As you can imagine, Nehemia is not supposed to know about the competition, let alone that she's Selena Sardothian. So she thinks, oh, this is a lady in waiting in the court, and I don't like Calaine, who is a lady in waiting in court. I'd prefer to hang out with Lillian. So like, what's the big deal if I ditch Calaine and hang out with Lillian? Because she's an assassin and we can't leave you alone with her in case she might kill you and start a war. That's a little complicated. But honestly, Selena even enjoys Nehemia's company, so she's like, what's the big deal? I'm not gonna her. Like, I actually enjoy her company. Why would I do that? Like, there's someone here that I actually want to spend time with. Naturally, Cale just shuts it down and he's like, actually, me and Lady Lillian have to go. So he books it off with her. And then while they're eating dinner, we kind of get like a little peek into Cale's brain, and he kind of slowly admitting to himself that he might actually enjoy Selena's company. Whoa. The horror. Honestly, Cale's not a bad character. He's just so annoying in this book to me. Chapter 14, we are starting off with one of Cale and Selena's morning runs. One of the many infamous morning runs in this book. So they're starting to train a lot in private so that she can actually fight to her full potential, but then they also spar a lot in public where she performs kind of at the middle level so that she's not too impressive, but she also doesn't seem worth eliminating. And in these public trainings, Brillo's constantly praising Cain. Remember, he's Parrington's champion and the one that everyone thinks is gonna win, even the king. So Knox, one of the 3 champions I told you about, he ends up coming over to Selena, who he believes is Lady Lillian, when Cale's not around, basically introduces himself, and they start talking, and Knox is like, hey, I don't know if you heard, but like one of the champions died. He was found murdered this morning. And not just like murdered, like brutally torn apart into ribbons. That's literally exactly the word used in the book, is torn into ribbons. Knox and Selena decide to work on their target practice together, and Knox is okay and Lillian's pretending to be bad. And Knox basically is like, why are you pretending to be bad at this? She was like, I think you know why. And he was like, yeah, I kind of know why. And she was like, but I can give you some pointers. And he was like, yeah. So they have like a little throwing lesson and they're friends now. Love that for them. While talking, they discover that he is from Parenth, which is a city that was in Terrasen. And Terrasen's the kingdom that Selena was from before it was conquered by the king of Adarlan. So Cool fun fact about Knox. Later that night, Cale decides to come to Celaena's chambers, and she tries to ask him about the murdered champion, because she's like, well, technically, isn't that your job to look into that? And we find out that it is, and he's being super cagey and secretive about everything regarding that. And I guess he keeps trying to change the conversation to books, and she's like, that's me and Dorian's thing. You're gonna have to talk to me about these murders. But he's like not caving at all. So she decides to ask about his relationship with Dorian. She's like, you guys seem really close, like closer than a guard with a prince, typically. And he basically reveals that they grew up together and they've always been super close. So when Dorian asked him to be his captain of the guard, he couldn't say no. That's why he's like not technically considered a lord anymore, because he was a lord who was gonna inherit from his father. But in order to become the prince's guard, he had to surrender all of that, basically. And his dad is not happy about that, but that was just the decision that Cale made for himself and for his best friend Dorian. And that, I guess, is a redeeming quality. And I guess to get even, Cale makes Elena tell him about her past, which is so dumb to me because he literally hates everything about her. And then he's like, oh, so tell me all about your past and all the things that my emotional intelligence can't handle. And then he gets mad at her. I don't know. It's all really weird. Makes no sense to me in this book. He picks fights and then gets mad at her that they're fighting. She does end up telling him, though, about her story about basically being found frozen in the river, and that her kingdom that she did live in had been conquered by Adarlan, and that Arabin Hamel found her and basically made her into the assassin that she is. So he does kind of have a moment where he's like, oh shoot, like maybe it isn't your fault that you're like this. Maybe you didn't really have a choice. But then, of course, instead of having a human feeling, he decides to be like, oh, by the way, there's a challenge tomorrow. Good night. And then he leaves. Chapter 15. Celaena arrives to the very first trial. As they get there, there's a super ominous curtain. Obviously all the champions are there, but also all the nobles that are sponsoring champions are there as well, and Dorian's there to like come and watch things, and Celaena sees him and she's all like and then she has butterflies, and then you're like, oh no, that's happening. But she can't get distracted. She has to perfectly perform mid at this trial, so she needs to get her act together. So after this super long and unnecessary dramatic reveal, they finally pull back the curtain and there's a bunch of targets, and their first challenge is archery. So they all get 5 shots and there's 5 targets. But every target gets smaller and further away as you go. And basically whoever does the worst gets sent home. As they're about to start, Cale of course comes over and he's like, remember, do well, but don't do too well. So Knox is actually one of the first ones to go, and he does pretty well thanks to his little lessons that he took with Celaena. Good for him. This is also the point where they make it pretty clear, like, okay, Knox and Celaena are allies. They got each other's backs. So this is good. Then Cain goes after him and absolutely crushes it. 5 perfect targets. Could not have done better. It's annoying, but it is what it is. Celaena's the last to go. And at this point, she's seen so many people do well, and she's seen how much praise Cain has gotten, and she's just seething at this point. Her pride can't handle it. So you know what she does? She makes 5 perfect targets. I'm sure she did it in the most like aggressive and female ragey kind of way, because literally everyone just goes silent and they're like, Lady Lillian, where did this come from? Of course, Cale's like ticked off because she showed her hand, and then Dorian just starts like racking up laughing, which I love. Chapter 16. Celaena and Cale are, surprise, surprise, on one of their morning runs. Cale is obviously still mad at her for not going along with the plan and basically showing everyone up in archery. So he's like pushing her now. Like, these runs are getting brutal. He's pushing her to her breaking point. He's basically like using it as punitive action. Celaena catches Cole staring, except for he's not staring at her like that. He is just staring at 3 scars down her back. So Cale is looking at these scars and starting to feel sympathetic, but then he goes from sympathetic to class A jerk because he says, what did you do to deserve those? Makes me so mad. Celaena has the best clapback. She says, no one deserves to be whipped like an animal. Is she wrong? No, she is not. So she tells him about how she received almost all of her scars at Endovir, the Eoway women that I told you about who would help her heal the scars and how they would get murdered for helping her heal them. She decides to tell Cale that story, and he starts to be more sympathetic, I guess. But I mean, Talk about the bare minimum. Like, I would hope you'd be sympathetic to someone getting tortured. Oh well. Another potential growing moment for Cale that just doesn't stick. So we're just gonna flash forward to the next day. The champions are all in the barracks with Brillo, and I guess they're all receiving some sort of instruction and training. They do have like group trainings. One champion literally just like took one of the guards and went and threw him to the ground, unalived him on impact. He's like ready to go, but not even 0.5 seconds pass, and a crossbow is just and man's gone. So they learned very quickly that they weren't kidding when they said that if anyone even tried to escape or show any sort of violence, that they would be immediately. But this also kind of gets Selena and Knox thinking when they're talking to each other. This man, like, he knew that was gonna happen. Like, they were warned ahead of time. So for this man to literally unalive this guard in such a public place, he wanted that end result, which kind of made Selena and Knox wonder, like, are we horrible people for potentially slaving away for this king, this horrible man, and doing his dirty work for so many years for freedom? Like, would it be better to just die than to go through with this? Chapter 17, we are now jumping to Dorian's point of view. So he's in the throne room, tired out of his mind, just attending court, you know, princely things. And he's with his mother, who still has no idea about the competition. She wonders what everyone's doing all day, is absolutely oblivious to everything that's going on. Honestly, how they would keep something like that from her, I have absolutely no clue. I mean, it's none of my business, but either she never leaves her chambers in the throne room, or she's just dumb as a rock. So we learn a couple things from their conversation. One, we learn that Holland is away at like a boarding school of sorts, which, remember, that's like the demon child little brother. And then Dorian gets even more stressed out because his mom starts bringing up the, hey, you should marry a lady and have some heirs. And she even suggests the Princess Nehemia. But then she jokes that that would never happen because she's super judgmental of the Eelway people and she just hates them and she's very prejudiced. She knows that her husband hates Eelway people too. And that actually makes Dorian go, well, maybe I would marry her. Obviously he's not going to because he's not into her like that and he really doesn't want to do the whole arranged marriage thing, which, wow, that's an original plot line. But yeah, anyway, so they keep talking and basically turns out like Mother Queen has literally assembled a list. Like, she literally on a piece of paper wrote a list of all of the available ladies that she believes to be fertile. How she would have that information, I have no clue, but that is also none of my business. Then she was like, you know who would be a really great fit for you if she wasn't already promised to the Duke Parrington? Lady Calaine. I'm sorry. No. Dorian also agrees with me on that one. She's promised to someone else, so oh no. Poor him. He'll just have to settle for not having Calaine. Dorian decides to get deep and open with his mother, which is honestly really cute, and it would be cute if she actually cared and was listening. But he basically shares with her that he does want to actually fall in love and experience love. He's like, I want to rule with someone that I love by my side. And his mother's like, yeah, sure, just look at the list I gave you. So super supportive and loving. He also goes into this really heartbreaking spiel about feeling so like different and lonely and set apart. She also doesn't care, so that's really sad. I know he's not a real person, but like the way that it's worded, it just makes you really feel for him. Remember how I said Dorian likes dogs? He's not just a dog person, it's actually a literal hobby of his to breed dogs, like hunting dogs, I guess. He's kind of sick and tired of hearing his mother tell him all about who he should and shouldn't marry, so he's like, just gonna go down to the kennels. So as he's walking down to the kennels, he walks past the barracks, and guess what he sees? Selena. And she's sword fighting against 4 different guards at once. She's crushing it. She's doing a great job. I'm sure all 4 of those guards were just sweating. So Dorian is just creepily lurking and just like admiring her and her assassin prowess. I don't know. It's weird, but it's kind of cute at the same time, you know? He's like realizing like, oh shoot, I kind of maybe really like her. And then in his peripheral, he sees the Princess Nehemia with Selena. At this point, why Nehemia didn't pick up on how are you this good at sword fighting as a lady? I don't know how she didn't pick that up, but apparently that was not cued in yet, which is crazy because Nehemia is a very smart woman. It just kind of occurs to him like, okay, this is a guest of the crown and this is the most notorious assassin in the kingdom, and she's currently dueling with a sword and she's within arm's reach of a person who, if she killed it, would totally start a war. So maybe I should put a stop to this. So he comes in, he's like, excuse me, where's Cale? This should not be happening. And Nehemia's like, what's the big deal? Like, we're just kind of messing around. And he's like, I wish I could tell you what the big deal is, but I can't tell you what the big deal is. And Celaena's like, yeah, Dorian, what's the big deal? Even though she knows what the big deal is, but she's obviously having a really good time making him sweat. But yeah, there's a bunch of banter and it's actually really cute and I really enjoy it. And basically Nehemia's like, well, Dorian, why don't you just join us? And he's like, no, I shouldn't. But he low-key like really wants to be there and hanging out with them. So he decides to join them and, but let's switch to wooden swords. Smart. And he kind of chops it up to the fact that there's two like royal people there, and so it would be really bad if one of them got injured for whatever reason. So they all switched to wooden swords, and then like Nehemia and Celaena and Dorian are like having like a play for fun sword fight. Like, I don't know, it's cute. That's the hard thing about explaining fantasy books sometimes. Like, there's so many things that are just adorable, but like when I summarize them like this, it just sounds so weird. So we are finally back to Celaena's point of view. Same scenario, they're all sword fighting and stuff, but now we're in Celaena's head and prepare to start kicking and screaming because she has the biggest crush on Dorian and she's just not even denying it at this point. Celaena's gonna drop another Celaena truth bomb. She admits that she has loved someone before. Not saying she loves Dorian, but basically thinking romantically. She's been in love with someone before and he was actually an assassin, just like her. But she also reveals that he is now dead. It's a bunch of wild stuff and she'll tell us more about it later, or I guess she'll tell Dorian more about it later. As the three of them are having the time of their life, having their little fun sword fight, Cale shows up. Total buzzkill. He basically, out of anger, just says a bunch of really dumb and stupid stuff that makes me really upset, and Celaena just straight up tells him that she hates him. In that moment, I think it was justified. I think sometimes they bicker unnecessarily, but I feel like this is one of those situations where he totally deserved it. And then she storms off to her rooms because he basically tells her, like, go to your room and think about what you did. Chapter 19. So I hope you're enjoying jumping POVs because we're about to jump to a whole new one. Welcome to Calaine's POV. So this takes place right after Dorian left court when he was on his way to the kennels. Obviously super bummed out because she's obsessed with him. Then Parrington walks in. Now remember, Parrington is like promised Calaine. It's not necessarily one of those betrothed situations, but I guess it's like a step before that, like courting or something. They're like officially dating in court standards. But we find out real quick that she hates his guts. Like, she is absolutely disgusted by him, and I don't blame her. Like, he does have really creepy behavior, if you catch my drift. He's also way older than her, and it's just really weird. And the only reason that she's in court and so close to Dorian is because of her situation with Parrington. Like, her family is well off, but they're not that well off. So she's kind of using her promised era with Parrington to get as close to Dorian as possible and try to get him to want to marry her, because if Dorian wanted to marry Calaine, that would be the only thing that got her out of a potential marriage with Parrington. Now, in this chapter, two really weird things keep occurring. Parrington is described as darkening, like his eyes, his face, like everything about him, like it darkens. Like, that word is used so stinking much. And the other thing, Calaine always has a headache. Like 24/7, she always has headaches. Now let me remind you, Calaine has no idea about the competition at all. But Parrington obviously does, because I mean, he's the one sponsoring Cain. So when Parrington comes up to Calaine and they're just kind of talking, and she decides that she wants to find out more about this Lady Lillian to see if she can eliminate her from the equation, she decides to bring it up to Parrington and be like, oh, what do you know about the Lady Lillian? I just met her, you know, I ran into her in the hallway and we chatted for a little bit. Now, mind you, I can only imagine what Parrington is thinking in this moment. Like, what do you mean you ran into her in the hallway? Remember, he was at the prison to pick her up. So he actually, in addition to Cale and Dorian, knows that she's actually Celaena Sardothian and that she's an assassin in this competition. So he's kind of panicking because he has to try to find a way to explain this without telling her what's actually going on. because he's like, oh, she's not important. So she pulls the whole like, oh, well, I heard that her and Dorian may be having a thing, so maybe it's important that we do know who she is. And he just kind of looks at her and he loses it because he's like, obviously Prince Dorian does not have a thing for an assassin. Like, you clearly have this wrong. It's weird. It's awkward because she's trying to get information and he can clearly tell she's trying to get information. She totally has the situation all wrong. It's just a really weird interaction in general. Next, we're jumping to a Cale and Dorian POV, and they are sparring with each other and fighting, sword fighting with each other. Cale thinks Dorian needs to stay away from Selena, so he's all like, I think you should stay away from Selena. And then Dorian's like, I think you should keep a better eye on her. Clearly, they're both upset for other reasons other than what they're pretending to be upset with each other about. Neither of them knows what to do about it. Of course, they changed the topic of conversation to the murder that happened. Cale still has no idea who did it, but upon investigating the crime scene, found that all of the organs of the body were removed, like intentionally, which spices things up a little bit. Makes it a little more intentional and a little scary. So, chapter 20. Let's jump back to Selena's point of view. So she's just vibing, reading in her room. Once she finishes one of her books, she just goes back to hating Cale. And she gets really emotional about how much she hates Cale, actually. And then she gets mad at herself for being so emotional about it in the first place. She wants to get her mind off of it, but she's already read all the books that she currently has, and it's late at night, so she can't go back to the library. And so she's just looking around her room. And mind you, at this point, they explain her room a little bit more and describe it more, and it's just like, oh my word, how big is this room actually? I feel like in my brain I imagine like a normal sized room, but this is like, it has a music room, it has a game room, it's like basically a mini house, but there's a pianoforte. She's hesitant to go play on it, I guess, but she's also very drawn to it, so she decides, you know, like maybe she should play it. And this is also where we get another Selena truth bomb, and we find out that not only did she play the piano, but she was really good at it. Only thing is, she always played it for Arobin Hamel, so for her it's not like the most fond memories. And then on top of that, she associates playing the piano with the boy that she loved that we found out had died. And it's also here that we find out his name was Sam. She associates playing piano with him. So that's why it's so hard for her to play it, but for some reason she's very drawn to it. I mean, it's right there in her room. So she starts to play, and at first I guess it's rough, and then she's like gradually picking it up as she goes, and she's getting very into it, and she's playing a song that means a lot to her. And then she like hears a noise and turns around, and like Dorian has been standing in the door just like watching her play. He tells her like that it's beautiful and where did she learn to play. She was in a very vulnerable moment and she didn't want to be overheard by anyone, so she's getting very defensive and kind of like, please leave me alone, like that wasn't really for you to hear, you know, like don't come into my rooms uninvited please. But he's a shameless flirt, so he somehow manages to flirt his way out of this one, but he tries to tease her like into playing more piano for him or whatever. And thankfully, eventually, he does pick up that it's a sensitive topic and he should probably let it go. So thankfully he does. As he's leaving, Selena does decide to open up a little bit. I don't know if it's because she already was pretty vulnerable playing for him in the first place, but she decides to share basically that the song reminded her of the man that she used to love, Sam. Now I'm sad. Chapter 21. This one kind of starts off with a jump scare. Selena dangled from the stone wall of the castle, her legs trembling as she dug her tar-covered fingers and toes into the cracks between the giant blocks of the castle. Selena is literally scaling the castle. The stone one, obviously, not the glass one. I don't think it would even be possible to scale the side of a glass castle. Pan out. All the other remaining champions are also scaling this castle, so this is the next trial. So she's currently like 70 feet up off the ground, and she has about like 30 feet left to go before she reaches this flag at the top of the stone castle, and it's pretty much a race to see who can grab the flag first. She took a harder way just so that none of the guys would basically try to sabotage her, but also because she wasn't trying to finish in first place, because according to Cale, she still needs to be ending in the middle. So she's intentionally hovering like between 3rd and 5th place in this like race scaling up the side of the castle. And of course, Cain is in first place and he's like really close to getting it. One competitor falls to the ground and like gone. He's unavailable. She sees that and she's like, ah, yeah, can't fall or I'm gonna die. So then she continues to climb, and that's when she looks down and she sees her buddy Nox. He's a couple assassins below her, and she sees a little bit of a seam that she doesn't like. Chapter 22. Selena looks down and Nox is getting teamed up on by a bunch of other champions, and they're just straight up trying to sabotage him and push him off so he's also gonna fall. Selena is a super solid friend. She would literally take a bullet for you if bullets existed at this time. She decides to take a metaphorical bullet and practically jump down. Now, none of this makes sense to me in regards to physics, but somehow she jumps down and perfectly lands exactly where she needs to and is able to kapow the guys away from Nox and rescue Nox. Then she like pulls him down more, so they both get pulled down a crazy ton, and they're like away from the other people who are trying to sabotage them, but now they're at like the very back of the line. But I guess because the one person fell and died, her and Nox don't get eliminated because Cain ends up getting the flag and winning, and Nox and Selena are still in the back. Selena gets back to her rooms and the poor girl cannot catch a break. Cale is on her tail, just like totally tearing her apart for her behavior, basically saying she almost risked everything. And she of course has no regrets because Nox is her friend. And Nox could have died. Cale decides his only creative clapback is to make some annoying comments about how she totally cares about people's lives, you know, since she's an assassin and all. Low-hanging fruit, I guess. He leaves. So now Selena is in the rooms hanging out with Philippa, and Philippa, apparently, she knows all the gossip. Like, she hears everything. She's one of those ladies' maids who she hears everything, she retains it, and she's gonna give it right back to Selena and let her know everything she knows. Apparently, the scaling the wall trial that we just did, one of the champions just didn't show up to that. Selena was like, okay, that's really weird. Like, maybe he tried to escape last night or whatever. No, Philippa tells us that the champion that didn't show up to the trial was murdered last night. And that murder scene almost exactly matched the last murder. 2 champions have been murdered brutally in the same exact way. Now we're going to flash forward 2 weeks. We did miss 2 trials. One was in stealth and one was in tracking. I have no idea how in the world they would do that, which I'm assuming is why we passed that time, because that probably would not have been very fun to read. She stays performing in the middle just like Cale told her to. There were eliminations, but she wasn't even close to being eliminated, so we're all good. This is also like this really fun moment where Selena basically feels like she's finally gotten back to the point of health she was before she got sent to the salt mines. Now not only is she able to keep up with Cale when they spar and when they do their runs together, but she's actually starting to outperform him. We also learned that Dorian has not really stopped by to see Selena or talk to her at all over these 2 weeks, but he's at both the trials and he still gives her like little smiles and winks and is a shameless flirt as always. And she gets butterflies and all that, all the cute things. Honestly, for me, I feel like the end of this chapter is where it starts to get really interesting, because Selena for the very first time admits to herself that at this point, now that there's only so many champions left, she's starting to really see all of their different skill sets, and she's starting to actually doubt whether or not she can win, even at full health. I'm starting from chapter 23 for a reason. A lot of stuff really just starts going in a whole different direction as soon as we get to this point. Okay, so Selena is in her rooms and she is tossing and turning because for the first time in this entire competition, she's actually doubting if this is going to be an easy win for her. So the chapter starts with Cole like waking her up and being like, hey, wake up, it's Samhain, which Samhain is a holiday in Adarlan, which is basically, I believe, their version of the Day of the Dead. I'm not going to pretend to know that much about that holiday. At first, Elena's pretty excited because she's like, I love Samhain, but then he's like, oh, well, you're not invited to any of the royal festivities. I just wanted to let you know it's the holiday and there will be festivities that you're not invited to. And then we're gonna hop over to Dorian's POV. He's walking around the castle and he runs into Cale, Selena, and Nehemia. And Dorian's actually starting to feel really guilty around Nehemia. If you watched part 1, you know that I mentioned a couple chapters ago there was this 2-week gap of time where we didn't really see Dorian. Basically, we find out that he has been knee-deep in politics fighting Parrington because Parrington wants to use the Lady Nehemia as basically a hostage to get her people of Eoway to bow the knee and basically do whatever Adarlan wants them to do. Dorian has been absolutely fighting that, but not really successfully, so he has a lot of guilt. I'm not exactly sure what excuse Elena told Nehemia for why she can't come to the festivities, because Nehemia doesn't actually know who she really is. She thinks she's the Lady Lillian. But Nehemia knows that she's not allowed to come to the festivities for whatever reason, and she's also trying to guilt Cale and Dorian into letting her come, but neither of them are budging, sadly. As Dorian always does as his coping mechanism, he just ditches the scene and he decides to go to the kennels and hang out with his dogs that he breeds as a side hobby. And then on a side note, Nehemia and Selena, who by the way, they still talk in Eelway a lot together, which drives Cale and everyone else insane because no one else really knows Eelway as well as Nehemia and Selena do. They come to an arrangement. Selena is going to help Nehemia get better at the common tongue, and Nehemia is going to help Selena get better at Eelway because she's good, like she can carry a conversation, but it's not amazing. Obviously, Cale sees this as a horrible thing that he needs to put a stop to instantly, but of course, Nehemia and Selena are like, what's the big deal? Selena just kills me in all of these scenes because she knows that it is such a huge security risk having her alone with Princess Nehemia, but Dorian and Cale are so determined not to tell Nehemia about this competition that she just keeps getting left in the dark. So Cale keeps telling them this is a really bad idea, and Nehemia and Selena keep saying, what's the big deal, as they're walking through the gardens, and they're basically all three bickering about this when they come to the base of the clock tower. Do you remember the black stone clock tower we talked about with like the gargoyles around it, the weird markings that are like engraved at the bottom of the black stone? So they're walking through the gardens and they get to that clock tower, and who else like crouched down at the bottom of this clock tower than Cain, Duke Parrington's champion. And he's like cleaning it, like he's wiping at where the symbols are and cleaning it off. And if that wasn't weird enough, Nehemia knows what these markings are. They're called word marks. Mind you, I know some people say weird marks. No. Nehemia reveals that word marks are from an ancient religious language that died out years ago. And naturally, Selena has a lot of questions and Nehemia just refuses to answer all of them. And she's like, I don't know anything else. I can't tell you anything else. And we pick up very quickly that that's not entirely the case. And then in Eelway, so that Cale does not understand, they decide, okay, let's go ahead with these language lessons without Cale knowing. Which I don't know how she really manages that with all the guards that are around her rooms at all times, but somehow they make it work. Chapter 24, we are going to jump forward to the Sam Hewen festivities that Selena is unfortunately not invited to. And she is bored in her room and she is just looking for something to do. She's bored out of her mind and she's just seething because this girl loves to party. So she's lying in bed. She just finished one of the books that Dorian got her, I'm sure. And she's looking at this tapestry that's on her wall and she notices that it ripples against the wall. There's a draft. And sure enough, she pulls back the tapestry and she finds a hidden door. She opens up this door and there is a secret passageway. There's nothing that I love more than like a hidden door / hidden passageway storyline. And off the bat, she makes a couple observations. It clearly hasn't been used in years because the stairs are just covered with dust. So she goes down this really long staircase and then she comes up to 3 arches or portals. Doorways of sorts. She decides to go through the middle one first. I don't know about y'all, but I'm more of like a start on the left and work my way over to the right, but she decides to just go straight forward to the middle because she hears something, I guess. So she's walking through this passageway and she realizes a couple things. One, this is potentially a really good escape way. Shortly after that, she realizes that this is an absolute maze because she's walking, and she's like not getting anywhere. Like it's just a labyrinth of passageways. And then the third thing is that she realizes she doesn't actually want to escape because she's afraid that Cale would get in trouble. Why do we care so much about Cale? all of a sudden, Selena, what's going on there? She's gonna stay in the competition, win the competition, and then keep this escape a secret so that if when she becomes the king's champion, she starts getting asked to do things she's not comfortable with or stuff starts going really south, then she'll be able to escape through these passageways. So it's a win-win for everyone. So she decides at this point to just turn around and start heading back because it's been a while and she doesn't want anyone to realize she's not in the room because obviously it would give away that she found some sort of escape. So she starts heading back to the room and then she hears like music and voices in the distance. So she decides to go check it out. She follows the sound and ends up finding like this peephole onto the Sam Heughan festivities in the grand ballroom. In this part, like, I don't know why this part makes me so irrationally mad. Every single time I reread this book, which has been a couple times now, as she's looking down at this festival, she notices all of the champions. Everyone who's a part of this competition was invited to the festival and is down there just having a grand old time. She was literally the only one not invited. Something about that just... And then while she's looking, she sees Dorian, she sees Nehemia, and then she sees Cale, and then he starts to leave. And she realizes that earlier that day, he promised to like bring her something from the festival. So she realizes that he's on his way back to her rooms. And she just took a whole labyrinth of a maze to get to where she is, and somehow she has to hightail it back and up all those stairs before he gets there. So it's a race back to her rooms. So she gets back to her room, she closes the door, she puts down the tapestry, and she like dives into bed seconds before her door opens and Cale comes to see her. So she pretends to be asleep. I guess he falls for it, and mind you, okay, this part is so hard and uncomfortable to read. This to me is like peak love triangle cringiness right here. He realizes she's just asleep, and so he just kind of like stands there and stares at her for a little bit. I'm sure it's meant to be endearing, but this is also the point where we find out that Cale does have it down bad. Down bad crying in the gym. But he has it down bad for Selena. And this is all awkward because she's awake. Like, she knows that he walked in the room and she's aware that he's like staring at her, but she has to pretend to be asleep. So all this is really uncomfortable. And if that wasn't already uncomfortable enough, he eventually decides to stop being creepy and turn around and leave. And Dorian is standing behind him. This makes me so uncomfortable. I love Dorian, I love Cale, but this love triangle, it just makes me so uncomfortable for about 100 different reasons. Cale and Dorian just get in a fight right then and there, and how I imagine this is they're like whisper fighting and Selena's right there listening to the entire conversation. Cale is telling Dorian that he should not be visiting her unsupervised, and Dorian is telling Cale, you're just here to train her, you shouldn't be making unnecessary visits. They both clearly have a thing for her and they both are very clearly jealous, but they can't exactly admit that to the other person, and it's just very, very humorous. Flash forward to the next morning, because I've had enough of Sam Heughan festival night. Cale does come to see Selena in her rooms to bring her the party favor that he promised her, and it is a little ring. It's a little ruby ring. And the thing is he talks about how it's basically like a party favor where most ladies of the court would get their ring and then it would end up thrown away or forgotten after a couple days. But to her, it meant the world, and Cale giving it to her meant a lot. It's just a big deal. Chapter 25. Selena decides to go down to the passages again another night, on a night that she feels pretty safe that neither Cale nor Dorian are gonna try to come visit. And she decides to go through the third door. And not far past that door, she comes across a tomb. And in this tomb are two basically statue-like crypts of the two people inside of the coffins. I'm sure there was a much more graceful way to say that, but I think you get the idea. And she quickly realizes that the man and the woman whose bodies are in this tomb are both wearing crowns. On top of that, she looks closer at the woman and she has a word mark on her forehead. And she also has arched and pointy ears. This woman was Fae, which is especially crazy because that would mean that this is the tomb of King Gavin and Queen Elena, aka the first king of Adarlan, the country where most of this book is taking place, and the first princess of Terrasen, the country that Selena came from before the king of Adarlan just squashed it. And the odd thing is how historically significant these two people are, and yet their tombs are in a very unkempt, very neglected place in a forgotten passageway. And then next to King Gavin is a sword, and it is the sword Damaris. And this sword is a very big deal because it was used in a super big war, and it was the sword that slayed the Dark Lord Erewhon. A lot of people say it differently. I say Erewhon. Honestly, I'm just gonna read this next part because it's kind of a lot. Are you ready? I don't think you're ready for this next part. "You know your history," said a light female voice. Mind you, Calaine is alone in this passageway, and there's a voice. It's not coming from Calaine. Turns out it is quite literally the ghost of Queen Elena, who has quite literally been dead for over 1,000 years. So Calaine thinks she's dreaming. She's just like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you in my brain? So Queen Elena says that she's from another world, but she was able to slip into this world to give Calaine a warning. And I love how Calaine is less concerned about the warning, and she's like, what do you mean you slipped into this world? Like, how is that possible? I mean, priorities, but... So she says she had to sneak past the 8 guardians in order to get here while they were distracted, and basically confirms that the 8 guardians are the 8 gargoyles on top of the black stone clock tower. And then she delivers her warning. "Nothing is a coincidence. Everything has a purpose. You were meant to come to this castle just as you were meant to be an assassin to learn the necessary skills for survival. Something evil dwells in this castle, something wicked enough to make the stars quake. Its malice echoes into all worlds. You must stop it. Forget your friendships, forget your debts and oaths. Destroy it before it's too late, before a portal is ripped open so wide that there can be no undoing it. You must win this competition and become the king's champion." And then, if that wasn't already spooky enough, she goes, "They're coming," and then she just disappears. And then off in the distance, she hears a growl, like a growling noise coming from a literal live creature. So she hightails it back to her rooms as fast as humanly possible, because do you blame her? That is the only appropriate response. And then she hears a bunch of screaming behind her as she's running up the stairs to her room, but she closes the door, she closes the tapestry, she like pushes something in front of the tapestry where the door is, and then she like crawls into her bed. And then she wakes up and she realizes that it was all just a really bad dream. I know, I had the same reaction when I was reading it. I was just like, are you kidding me? But then she like rolls over in bed and she realizes she has something in her hand. It is the necklace that the ghost Elena was wearing, but it's real in the palm of her hand. And then she realizes that wasn't actually a dream the whole time. It was real. A 1,000-year-old queen spoke to her in a ghost form. The gargoyles on the clock tower are alive, and there's a live creature in the passages. Her being an assassin wasn't an accident, and she needs to win the competition and vanquish an evil. No other directions were included. So this necklace is a metal amulet, basically, with like a gem in the middle that looks kind of like an eye, I guess. It's like a blue stone in the shape of an eye. So it sounds pretty. I'm sure I can find fan art somewhere. Here it is. She's like, you know what? I don't know about the whole vanquishing evil thing, but I think I can win the competition, so that's what we're gonna do. Chapter 26. Calaine wakes up to Cale bursting into her rooms, and he's like, where were you last night? And she panics because clearly she's not going to tell him about the secret passages in her room. Otherwise he would totally get rid of them or just move her to different rooms, and she needs that backdoor escape plan. So she decides to pull the whole, I need to get ready for today's trial. But Cale informs her that it's been canceled because another champion has been murdered. 3 murders now. They were all murdered in the same exact form and fashion. We officially have a serial killing situation on our hands. So then it kind of clicks with Calaine that this evil that she needs to vanquish very well might be this whole like serial killing situation that's going on in the castle. So Cale goes to investigate the murders, forgetting that he came in there in the first place to find out where she was last night. So I guess he's got one-track mind. So he heads back to the murder scenes because now he's really got to figure out who's murdering everyone, because there's clearly a pattern and he doesn't really need there to be a 4th murder under his watch. So Selena decides that she's going to head back to the tombs to basically find out how much of what happened last night was in her head and how much of it was actually real. There's quite literally no reason why she should be the one to do everything and why she needs to be the one to vanquish evil. What does becoming the champion have anything to do with anything? And if this ghost knew that there was a dark evil, maybe she has an idea of how to get rid of it. So basically, Selena's like, I need more information here. So she's heading back to the tomb. The more poking around she does and the more investigating she does, she realizes, you know what? Maybe the whole Queen Elena thing was a hallucination, and this evil thing is frankly none of my business. I'm just going to focus on the winning the competition part, and hopefully Cale and Dorian can take care of the serial killer, and then I did my part. Then we jump forward a couple hours, and I really need SJM to spell this one out a little bit more for me. Somehow Selena gets out of her rooms and finds her way through the castle to this murder scene and decides to just start taking a look around. Whoever was her guard that day should probably be fired, but that's none of my business. Her observations at this murder scene is that, like the other champions, he was half-eaten, all of his organs were taken out, including his brain, his face. And this is one of the things, it's like the first time we've heard about this, but this is also the first murder scene that we've seen, so we don't really know if the other ones were like this or not. But she said that the champion's face was frozen in like a silent scream. This book is not for the faint of heart if you can't stand gore. So somehow she can tell that his face was frozen in a scream, but at the same time his face was peeled off. I'm too scared to look up online what this scene might have looked like, so I'm just going to use my imagination there. She looks at the walls and she sees written in blood using hand word marks. The markings that are at the bottom of the stone clock tower, yeah, those word marks are written in blood on the walls, and then on top of that someone tried to like smudge them out. That's bonkers. Anyways, now that this person is like clearly out of the picture, there are only 16 champions left in this entire competition. For like half a second, we jump to Cale and Dorian's POV. They're talking about the murder cases, and it occurs to them they can't rule out Selena as a suspect, and they have to accept the fact that it could possibly be her. Chapter 27, Selena and Nehemia are having one of their language learning dates, and they're walking around the grounds of the castle when they come across this black stone clock tower again. And Selena decides that she's going to ask Nehemia even more about these word marks, because obviously she's way more intrigued now that they're directly tied to these murders going on. And then Nehemia, every single time she gets very cagey and she's like, they're not worth your time, you don't want to know, I don't really know that much. She's always giving non-answers, and she's almost kind of contradicting herself. Like, she's like, you don't want to know one minute, and then the next minute she's like, I don't even know anything about them. And it's like, but how do you know she doesn't want to know if you don't know? Selena decides that she's going to start telling Nehemia about the murders that have been going on in the castle. People who don't know about the competition don't know about the murders either. So Nehemia is a great listener, and she and Selena just start talking about the possibilities, and for some reason Nehemia still has not clued in that there's such thing as this competition. While they're walking through the gardens, they run into Cain, and Cain decides to just start throwing out insults at Selena. Like he owns the place. He also starts exhibiting really weird behavior, like he's definitely trying to pick a fight with Selena, and he's really trying to bait her. Clearly, if they express any sort of violence, they both get on the spot, so she's clearly not going to give in to this. But the issue is that Nehemia thinks that she's Lady Lillian. So when Cain starts making jokes and basically vaguely threatening to reveal her true identity, and this really starts to freak Selena out because no one's supposed to know she's Selena Sardothian, not even Cain, but it kind of makes sense because Parrington was there when they picked up Selena from the salt mine. So it makes sense that he would know who she is, but for him to threaten to reveal that in front of Nehemia is like a big no-no. And if you didn't already love Nehemia enough, she basically finds an excuse to whisk Selena away, and Selena starts to be like, look, you probably have a lot of questions, and Nehemia's like, you know what, I don't need to know. That's up to you to decide when to tell me who you really are. And like, what a sweet friend. Mad respect for Nehemia for that. They decide to part ways, and Selena decides to go to the library because she is now convinced she needs to learn what these word marks are. Why are they at the murder scenes? Why are they on this stone clock tower? There's so many questions around these, and why won't Nehemia tell her anything? That's another thing that has her really spooked out. So she decides she's going to go to the library and figure it out. So she spends hours in the library finding literally nothing. She finds so many books, and they all say something about them, but they contradict each other, or they're all super vague, and basically she just ends up chasing word marks and circles and finding out nothing new. She's going book after book after book after book. Cale's basically sitting on the other side of the table making fun of her for her obsession with word marks. But then she finds a book towards the bottom of her stack called The Walking Dead. Not the TV show. It's a book. Something off the bat is Calaine is like, I know I grabbed a lot of books off the shelves, but I know for a fact I did not pick this one off the shelf, so what's it doing in my stack? So she's a little confused, but then she opens it up and she finds some freaky stuff. She finds illustrations of men who look like the bodies at the murder scenes, with like their face frozen in screams and their skin peeled off and their eyes dark and hollow. And I guess Cale realizes that she's like super invested in her book, so he decides to pull a prank on her and scare her, which jerk move, by the way. That's like scaring someone who just watched a horror movie. Like, just don't do that. And then she decides to call it a night on her word mark search because she is adequately spooked out. Then chapter 8, which is a really cute and a really short one. So apparently in Calane's chambers, there's a literal game room, basically what you would consider our equivalent to a pool table in there. And she's trying to play it alone, but she really sucks at it. And Dorian, I guess, stopped by her rooms to see how she was doing, and he happens to be really good at this game. So he decides he's gonna show her how it's done, and she's like, you know what, I think I might just let him. And they end up playing for hours and talking, and it's really cute. And Dorian even has like this whole inner monologue about how smart she is, how much he enjoys actually spending time with her and talking to her. That's really it. Like, that's really all this chapter is, but it's honestly so cute and I love it. Chapter 29, we are going to flash forward a couple days to the next test. And all it really is that they have to fight with each other. And it's not for the purpose of like knocking out the other person or another person. It's really just to see how impressive you are. So basically Brillo, the weapons master, and the King of Adarlan are gonna watch every single match and see who impresses them and who doesn't, and the least impressive person goes home. Calaine is waiting for her turn, and the guy who's supposed to go against her apparently just starts talking smack. The entire time he's just making comments about how she's a woman, and clearly, and just basically making a bunch of assumptions about how she got this far in the competition, and it is ticking her off. And he's basically teasing her for thinking she can win this competition as a jewel thief. But Calaine knows she's really here because she's the most notorious assassin of Adarlan. So when it comes time to spar with this guy, he thinks that he's gotten in her head, but in reality, he just woke up the inner psycho assassin that she is, and she takes him down in like 2 minutes. And then she walks out. And she did all the impressing she needs to. And naturally, Cale's mad because she's supposed to perform at middle level. She's supposed to be average, but clearly she's sick and tired of being average and everyone picking her out as the wink link in this competition. And now we're gonna jump to Caltaine's POV. As always, she has a migraine. She's grossed out by Parrington's existence. She's still obsessed with Dorian, and she's still kissing up to the Queen of Adarlan, trying to get in her good graces so that she can marry her son, Dorian. They're at court, I guess, and her and the Queen are gossiping, as courtly ladies do, I suppose. And the Queen basically says, you know, if you weren't promised to Parrington, you'd make a great match for my son Dorian. Considering that it is Caltaine's life goal to marry Dorian, this gets to her head so badly that she's going to make some big decisions. Not right now, but soon. So hang tight. Chapter 30. Elena and Cale are sparring and training together for the competition, and they are talking about the murders. Elena does reveal that she thinks it is Cain, and then reveals to Cale that Cain made it very clear to her in front of Nehemia that he knows that she's not actually Lillian. And then Cale decides it's a good opportunity to try to fit in some flirting, and tells her that he thinks she has the chance to win the competition. I wouldn't say it's great flirting, but it's something. He's not picking a fight, so that's something. And they're just sparring and having the time of their lives when a guard comes to get Cale because there has been a fourth murder. A fourth murder, guys. There aren't even that many champions left. Like, at this rate, they're all gonna be gone before the final trial. So he's starting to head there, and then he realizes that Celaena's pretty invested in everything, and he decides to invite her. So I guess you could call this their first date. So they finally get to the murder investigation crime scene, and Celaena makes a couple observations. Word marks written in blood, but they're on the ground this time instead of the wall. It's the champion that she totally took down in the last trial, so that's not really gonna help with the allegations that it could be her. And then the body is covered in claw marks. And then, of course, all the other injuries to the body match the injuries to the bodies in the previous murders as well. So Celaena's naturally back off to the library to find out what in the world these word marks are and what they mean, because they are clearly very relevant. Nope. My dog just threw up. We got outside just in time, and she's okay. But poor girl. Soka, come here. You want to say hello to everyone? Someone's having a rough day. Do you feel better now that that's all out of your system? Do you feel better? You just need little belly rubs, that's all. Please don't lick my face after you just threw up. Where were we? Anyways, Celaena goes back to the library to figure out more about word marks. Same thing as last time, doesn't find anything new, heads back to her rooms. So she's doing more research on word marks when Dorian stops by to visit. So they're discussing the murders and who it might be, and Celaena confronts Dorian for thinking that it's her. And he said, you know what, I may have thought that at one point, but that's not why I increased your guardage. I increased your guardage to protect you. So they're no longer convinced it's her, and if anything, more concerned about protecting her. They end up talking about a lot of different things, and it's really cute, and they really do have like their moment, and you can definitely tell that this is developing from a crush to like a mutual understanding, I guess. And it's really tender and it's really cute, but then he sees the ruby ring on her finger, and he kind of knows what it is. He knows it's from the party. He knows who else would have given it to her, and things get a little awkward. But anyways, we're gonna jump to Cale's POV. Do you remember how in part 1 of Throne of Glass I mentioned that something about Parrington is that he's always described as darkening? Basically, we just jumped to Cale. I don't know if they're eating in like the dining hall or why exactly they were in the same room, but basically Cale is noticing like his eyes just like darken all of the time. And every time his eyes darken, the people around him just seem so heavy and miserable. Specifically in the scene, I believe it's Calaine who's with Parrington, and he's like, why do his eyes keep darkening? And why does it seem to be affecting Calaine? It's like a really weird situation, but that's just what he observes. Chapter 31 starts with a jump scare because Celaena's literally sleeping, and then she's woken up by the ghost of Elena, and basically just reiterates to her how important it is that she win this whole competition. And Celaena's like, yeah, you keep mentioning that, but maybe actually some help would be nice.
Look to your right. You will find the answers there.
Which is not helpful in the slightest. And then she literally disappears. Celaena's like, yeah, thanks for nothing. Thanks for waking me up in the middle of the night for literally 0 instructions. So that's great. It's the next morning. Celaena's clearly and obviously tired from her lovely little wake-up call that she got late last night. And they are at the next trial, which is poisons. Every single champion has a table in front of them, and on this table is 7 different goblets. Every single goblet has a different liquid in it, and their job is to order them from most poisonous to least poisonous. And they have to drink whichever one they put in the least poisonous spot and hope they don't die. So Celaena is actually super stressed because she does pretty good for most of them. Then she gets to like the last 2 goblets when it literally could go either way. She's like, this could either be a trick and this is water, or it's like more poisonous because you can't smell it, so it's more lethal. Like, she's thinking of all the possibilities, but this challenge is timed, so she has like only like a minute left and she's trying to figure out what to do. And then she remembers, I don't know if you remember from my part 1 video, one of the first things they ever did was all the champions got in one room and they introduced themselves one of the champions, when he introduced himself, he said he was a master of poisons. And that is the person to her right. What did Elena say? What was Elena's help?
Look to your right. You'll find the answers there.
So Elena looks over and notices that he puts the goblets in a certain order, and so she decides to copy him with the first and the last goblet. And sure enough, her and this one champion, who's like the master of poisons, are the only ones who pass. Other people got poisoned. They didn't like die, like they weren't that kind of poisons, but they were definitely very ill and had to go to the infirmary. Chapter 32. Selena and Nehemia are practicing their languages with each other, and they're just walking through the castle and talking, and they have a couple sweet moments while they're learning languages together, and basically have one of those cute, like, you're my best friend moments, and I love it, and their friendship is so sweet. But as they're walking through the halls, they hear barking. Apparently they got very close to Dorian's kennels, so they decided to go inside because they haven't been inside before, I guess. I don't know about y'all, but that'd be like one of the first places I go if I'm stuck in this castle for like months on end. But anyways, they're going into the kennels and they see Dorian there with like this fresh batch of puppies. Mama dog got out and there was an incident, and these are not purebred dogs. And then on top of that, so they were just going to give the dogs away, like not as hunting dogs, but as pets. But there was one dog specifically that didn't have a good demeanor and wasn't really good with people or kids. So they were just gonna like put the dog down. And Selena's like, absolutely not. Like, I refuse to let you do that. She even goes as far to tell Dorian, like, if you're just gonna kill it, like, I'll keep it. And he's like, what are you gonna do with the dog? And she was like, well, I don't want it, but I'm not gonna let you kill this dog just because you don't like its personality. And so he's like, fine, you know what? I'm gonna make a point to train this dog and make sure that it learns to like people, and I will make sure it finds a loving home and a loving family. And for some reason it ends up being like a cute bonding moment for them. As they're leaving, Nehemia is like, you and the prince have a thing, don't you? And of course Selena tries to deny it, but obviously we all know better, and we know they very much got it down bad for each other. And then she tells Nehemia goodnight, and I guess they walk past her chambers, so Nehemia goes into her rooms and Selena is walking back to her rooms. She did complain to Calaine and Dorian that the extra guards was just a little bit much and she felt like she couldn't breathe, so they're actually giving her some space now. Like, clearly some trust is being built up, and Cale and Dorian understand now that Selena's a good person and they don't really have to worry about her. She's gonna compete in the competition. She's not gonna cause problems because she wants her freedom. As she's like walking back to her rooms, and the guards are like a good bit behind her, and this part is very weird, so I'm just going to read it directly from the book. Something shifted in the reflection of the window, and she whirled as she beheld the man standing behind her, but Cain didn't smile at her, not in that mocking way. Instead, he panted, his mouth open and closing like a fish retched from water. His dark eyes were wide, and he had a hand around his enormous throat. Is something wrong? She asked sweetly. He glanced from side to side at the guards, at the window, before his eyes snapped to hers. His grip on his throat tightened as if to silence the words that he fought to come out, and the ebony ring on his finger gleamed dully. Even though it should have been impossible, he seemed to have packed on an additional 10 pounds of muscles in the past few days. In fact, every time she had seen him, Cain seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Her brows knotted, and she uncrossed her arms, and he took off down the hall like a jackrabbit, faster than he should have had the ability to run. He peered a few times over his shoulder, not at her or the confused and murmuring guards, but at something beyond. Selena waited until the sounds of his fleeting footsteps faded, then hurried back to her own rooms. I'm sorry, what? Chapter 33, we are going to jump to Calaine's point of view, and this is where we find out that she has an opium addiction. So that's a fun character development moment for her. She's just like chilling in her room with her opium, and then Parrington calls on her. So she's like trying to get rid of the smell and hide the evidence as fast as possible. When Parrington comes in and he's talking to her, and honestly, I don't remember what he was talking about. It's not even really relevant, but she's just like straight up having hallucinations while he's talking to her. So she is like high as a kite. So Parrington's talking about Dorian, and he said that Dorian was asking about Calaine, but then Lady Lillian kept trying to change the topic. This doesn't happen in the book, so I don't know if he's making this up. It sounds like he is from like the reader's standpoint. This leads Calaine to like start brainstorming all the ways she could literally Lady Lillian and get her out of the picture while she's hallucinating. It's honestly, the whole scene's just a mess. So let's just jump to Selena's POV. There's really nothing else that happens in Caltaine's. Celaena has not been in her rooms long after her really weird interaction with Cain when Nehemia comes bursting into her room sobbing. The King of Adarlan disappeared a couple weeks ago. He's just been gone. No one really knew what he was doing, where he was going, what he was up to. He just brought a bunch of soldiers with him and left. And Nehemia just got news that the King of Adarlan had 500 of her people murdered, and a lot of them were children of her country, Iolé. Nehemia is understandably heartbroken. Not only does she have to play the role of the grateful guest in this king's kingdom, but there's quite literally nothing she can do, and she's pretty much a sitting duck in enemy territory. It's honestly just all really heartbreaking, and it's a huge mess. Chapter 34. Hours later, Nehemia ends up going back to her rooms to go to sleep for the night, and Celaena starts to feel ill. And by ill, I mean she's cramping. Having starved for over a year, this is the first time she's had cramps in over a year. And honestly, can we just take a minute to appreciate the realisticness of that from Sarah J. Maas's point of view? I feel like this topic does not come up in fantasy books ever. It's just attention to detail, and it's just realistic, and I applaud Sarah J. Maas for that. Anyways, Celaena's feeling really sick, and Dorian somehow finds out she's not feeling well, and he decides to come and keep her company and hang out with her for the day. They play like card games and read books and talk, and it's really cute. I feel like all of their times that they hang out is just super chill and really sweet and tender, and I love it. We kind of jump into Dorian's head for a little bit, and we basically learn that he is dying inside because he thinks that everything his father is doing is wrong, especially against the Iolé people, and he loves Nehemia. He thinks she's an amazing human being, and the fact that this is all happening to her, he feels so hopeless, despite the fact that he's doing everything he can to represent the Iolé people in all of their like political meetings. No one cares about his opinion because they keep nodding him off as like some young prince, but he can't outwardly discredit his father because that would be considered treason. So it's just a whole lot of mess. He basically gets to a point where he realizes that the same thing happened to Celaena. If you remember from my part 1 video, Celaena is from Terrasen, which 10 years ago was completely demolished by the King of Adarlan. And then Dorian has this moment where he realizes, although he can't say that what his father's doing is wrong, he can apologize. So he tells Celaena that not only is he sorry for what's happened to the Iolé people, but he apologizes to her that her whole kingdom, all of Terrasen, was taken down in his father's greed. He also opens up to her that he didn't just pick her as an assassin because he thought she could win. He chose her because he knew it would bother his father the most if the person who won his competition was from one of these conquered kingdoms. And I think that does help you see Dorian in a different light rather than like a spoiled prince who does like to flirt around. Like, he clearly does have a heart and much more of a moral compass than his father. And as Dorian's going to leave, Celaena gives him a little on the cheek, and it's really cute. And we've waited a really long time for this to happen. I gotta do my job. So this chapter is in Chaol's point of view, and this actually takes place a little while later. I don't think it says exactly how big of a time jump, but we know that it's almost Yulemas, which is basically their version of Christmas. There are only 6 champions left. And what's really funny about the fact that this is Chaol's point of view is that he's actually third wheeling Celaena and Dorian right now as they're arm in arm walking through the gardens in the winter. Bless his ever loving heart. But you know what? Maybe if you didn't insult her all the time, you would be walking arm in arm with her. Just a thought. And basically we hear his inner monologue of his jealousy and the woe is me, and we could care less about it. So we're just gonna jump over to Dorian and Celaena's POV. Dorian notices Celaena's necklace. Remember, she has that amulet the ghost of Queen Elena gave to her. So Dorian asks her about it, and she kind of panics, and she's like, oh, I found it in my rooms, like in one of the jewelry boxes that was given to me. And then Dorian pulls out a history lesson. When I was a boy, I used to read tales about the dawn of Adarlan. Gavin was my hero. I must have read every legend regarding their war with Erewhon. Elena, the first queen of Adarlan, had a magical amulet. In the battle with the Dark Lord, Gavin and Elena found themselves defenseless against him. He was about to kill the princess when a spirit appeared and gave her the necklace, and when she put it on, Erewhon couldn't harm her. She saw the Dark Lord for what he was and called him by his true name. It surprised him so much that he became distracted, and Gavin slew him. They called her necklace the Eye of Elena, but it's been lost for for centuries. Are you screaming? Because I'm screaming. And basically she's just like, must be a replica then. And I guess he seems fine with that answer, so she really dodged a bullet. So she ends up going back to her rooms, and we find out that she is still trying to figure out what the word marks are. There have been no additional murders in the gap of time, but now that there's only 6 champions left, that means that the odds of her being murdered the next time around are a lot higher. So she's very determined to figure out what these word marks are and who's killing everyone and why they're doing it. While Calaine is reading, one of the books like falls off of her bed, so she goes to like get on the ground and like pick it up, and when she does, something catches her eye under her bed. Word marks written in chalk, and she recognizes that the marks are the same ones that she found at the murder scenes. She scrubs those word marks away so fast with water, and I do not blame her. I would be doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, I don't think I'd even sleep in that room again. I think I'd leave the room and never come back. I think if it were me, those passageways out of the castle would be looking really good right about now. So she just gets rid of those marks, and she decides that she needs some fresh air. So she's gonna leave her room for a bit. On her way out, she walks past the library, and she sees that Nehemia is in the library. And as she walks up to Nehemia, she takes a look at the book that she's reading. And not only is the book in the common tongue, but it is extremely advanced language. And Nehemia is reading it just fine. It occurs to Calaine, Nehemia has been lying about knowing the common tongue. And when Calaine tries to confront Nehemia about it, she responds in perfect common tongue with 0 accent. So she's been lying about not knowing the common tongue. So what else has she been lying about? And honestly, the first thing Calaine thinks of is that she's probably lying about how much she knows about word marks. Chapter 36. Calaine has not seen Nehemia for days, and although she has a lot of speculation about what in the world she witnessed and what it could possibly mean, she doesn't tell anyone about it. Also, happy Yulemas. It's Yulemas morning, I guess, now. And there is a festival or a ball tonight, and Calaine is not invited, and she is so stinking mad because you already know the other 5 champions who are still in the competition are invited. And Dorian comes to her rooms and provides her with a bunch of candies and chocolates. This is also where we find out Calaine is a very big sweet tooth. And then he brings her a gift. It is the dog that she decided to save. And then Calaine gives Dorian another thank you kiss on the cheek. They're basically unofficially official at this point is what it feels like. And then Dorian pulls the whole see you at the Yulemas ceremony, so she's not invited to the ball, but she is invited to the ceremony. She decides to start getting ready for the ceremony because Yulemas is a very religious thing in Adarlan. As she's getting ready, she starts thinking about how Nehemia is going to this ball, and she starts to really second guess Nehemia's intentions, especially after the massacre of her people, and she's starting to wonder if Nehemia is going to seek revenge at this masquerade party. So she decides, for the safety of everyone else, she is going to crash the party. Chapter 37. We are at the Yulemas ceremony. As you guessed, the temple that they're in is also entirely made of glass. This ceremony consists of a lot of things, but the most important thing and the very last thing it consists of is called the procession of the gods. The procession is a bunch of blindfolded girls who dress in costumes with little props, each representing one of the gods. The children will then blindly stop in front of one person and present them with a gift that represents whatever that god or goddess represents. That person then receives that god or goddess's favor and blessing. So that was a bit of a mouthful, so I had to read that one. So the god of war representative stops in front of Duke Parrington and presents him with a miniature sword. Then the goddess of love passes Calaine, and she's a little upset about that because I think she was hoping for a little confirmation of her and Dorian's flirtations, but unfortunately that does not happen. But then the goddess of the hunt and the protector of the young representative walks right up to Calaine and presents her with a golden arrow. Chapter 38. Philippa is in on Calaina's scheme, getting her ready for the masquerade ball. Obviously, Philippa doesn't know her exact reasons for wanting to go. She just thinks that Calaine wants to sneak in and go. So Philippa's helping her get ready. And they basically scheme a way to get her out and past the guards and into the ball. We jump to Dorian's POV. He's at the ball having a good time, unfortunately trying to dance with all the eligible ladies that his mother wants him to take a shot with. And then he sees Selena. And he says, even with a mask, I would have known it was her. Good answer. She has her Cinderella moment where she's like walking down the stairs and everyone stops and looks at her. This is definitely where you can see that Cinderella influence that was in the original plot. Dorian has this thought as she's ascending the stairs, and it melts my heart every time. Seeing her made him feel like a man. She was something out of a dream in which he was not a spoiled young prince, but a king. Sorry, I really just love that line. So he decides he's gonna greet her at the bottom of the stairs as she's like getting closer to the bottom, so he's like confidently walking over, and then all of a sudden, Cale swipes right in. So let's jump to Cale's POV because he is absolutely ticked off. But Selena rightfully calls him out because sure enough, the other 5 champions were invited and are in attendance. So there's literally no reason why she should not be allowed there. He says, fine, you can stay, but I'm gonna stay by your side the entire night. And he watches her like a hawk to the point where, although everyone's like very intrigued by who she is, literally everyone's afraid to like come up to her and talk to her because Cale's being all guard doggish. So she is forced to sit by and watch Dorian dance with a bunch of other women. But Selena also does keep an eye on Nehemia. For like the first couple hours or so, she stays seated by the queen as their humble guest. Then a couple hours in, she decides that she's too tired, rightfully so. She's still in mourning of her people. And she decides that she's gonna leave, but on her way out, she decides to stop by and say hello to Selena real quick, or Lady Lillian. And something off the bat that rubs Selena the wrong way is that she goes back to shaky common tongue. She has a really strong Ilway accent again, and she's speaking in broken language in the common tongue, which Selena now knows that she's mastered the common tongue and she's fluent in it. So she's wondering why she's keeping up the ruse with her right now. And at this point, Selena's like, you know what? I feel bad that I even thought that she would try to anyone tonight and get her revenge, and she realizes that her friend is just in mourning, and you know what, her friend hasn't asked questions even though she knows that there's some secrets she's keeping from her, so the best she can do is respect her friend's privacy for the time being. Now that Selena knows everyone's safe, she can finally chill, and she wants to dance real bad. So she asks Cale to dance with her, and he rejects. He's so mean about it too. He's like, absolutely not. And then Dorian comes to save the day, and he asks Selena to dance, and they dance a good bit. Chapter 39, we jump to Dorian's POV where he's dancing with Selena. They dance for multiple dances. And for those of you who watch like period films, dancing with someone more than once, let alone multiple times, is like a big deal. And Dorian's having the time of his life. Then we jump to Cale's point of view, and he is just absolutely beaming watching them in the distance. It's so funny because it's literally his own fault. Like, she asked him to dance. Not only did he say no, but he was a total jerk about it, and then he's gonna get all upset and jealous that she's dancing with someone else. This is also kind of the chapter where he accepts the fact that they're in love and there's nothing he can do about it, and it breaks him just a little bit. Let's jump to, and if that POV wasn't painful enough, let's jump to Calaine's POV, and she's just absolutely at her breaking point. And she basically decides Lady Lillian needs to be eliminated by any means necessary. And then we jump to Selena's point of view, and Dorian walks her back to her rooms, and he gives her a kiss goodnight. Except for this time, we have graduated from cheek kisses, and it's a real kiss, and thus romance was born. Chapter 40. Let's start with one of Sarah J. Maas's biggest crimes. Selena decides to name the dog that Dorian gave her. She decides to name it Fleetfoot. If that isn't the dumbest name for a dog you've ever heard, I'm concerned about what kind of dogs you know. Let's jump to Calaine's point of view. She's talking with Parrington, and basically she complains about how Dorian and the Lady Lillian were dancing all night, and she basically points it out to be, we are people of this court, it is our responsibility to know who she is, because if they're really dancing like that, then it's possible she could become the queen, and it's important that we know who our queen's gonna be. Parrington just decides, you know what? What in the world? I'm gonna tell you. He tells her everything. He tells her about the competition. He tells her that Lady Lillian is a competitor. And then he also tells her that Lady Lillian is the one and only Selena Sardouthian. And Lady Calaine is like, what are we gonna do about that? It's clear that Dorian's fallen in love with this woman and she's an assassin. We can't allow this. So Parrington reveals to her that there's gonna be a mini tournament for the last 4 competitors where it's 1v1 and 1v1, and then the winners fight off, and whoever wins that is the champion. He says right before the final match to decide who's the champion, there's this big toast and everyone like drinks some wine. He says, how about this? Why don't you give the toast and I'll create a distraction and you can slip some poison into Celaena's goblet. And considering that eliminating the Lady Lillian, or who she now knows to be Celaena Sardothian, was always her plan, she agrees. Chapter 41, Celaena is in the library studying up more on word marks, and she actually does find some crazy stuff about word marks. There, looking up at her, were the symbols she'd seen near the bodies, and in the margin, written by someone centuries ago, was the explanation for sacrifices to the Ridderak. Using the victim's blood, mark the area around it accordingly. Once the creature has been summoned, these marks guide the exchange. For the flesh of the sacrifice, the beast will grant you the victim's strength. Someone was actually using the word marks to open a portal to summon this creature. It was impossible because magic was gone, but the text said that word marks existed outside of magic. What if their power still worked? Bum, bum, bum. It occurs to Celaena. Nehemia knows what word marks are, and she thinks that Nehemia is using the word marks to start a rebellion. Celaena decides that she's going to go into the secret passageways and tunnels behind her tapestry again to find out as much as she possibly can before confronting Nehemia. But then she turns into the tunnel and she hears chanting in another language. But it wasn't Nehemia, it was Cain. Chapter 42. Cain is legit summoning a Ridderak, and Celaena is standing right there. And when the beast is summoned, Celaena describes it as so. It was something out of an ancient god's nightmares. Its hairless gray skin was stretched tightly across its misshapen head, displaying a gaping mouth filled with black fangs. Its vaguely human body sank into its haunches, and it slid its long front arms across the stone floor. That is something from my nightmares. I can't even imagine how she's feeling in this moment. Like, she's in a dark passageway. There is nowhere to go but up the stairs. And I don't know about y'all, but when I'm running up the stairs, it's not really a very fast and graceful thing. And then Cain turns and sees her, and he says, "It wasn't meant to be you tonight, but this opportunity is too good to waste." So Celaena books it. Oddly enough though, one of the first thoughts that she has is that she can't die in the tunnels. And when you're about to die, the thoughts that you have right before you're about to die are very revealing. And she thinks about Cale. She realizes that if she dies in these tunnels, no one will ever find her, and Cale will think she ran away. It's fine. I'm fine. So she's sprinting to these tunnels, and right as she gets to the stairs, she decides instead of going up to the stairs, she's gonna make a left. She goes to the tomb, because you remember what's in the tomb next to the two coffins? The sword Damaris. She grabs that sword and she's kapow, kapow, kapow. She is fighting with this thing, this Ridderak. It does get her hand. I think it bites her hand. Yeah, it bites her hand. She slays the beast and she is out of there. She books it right back up to her rooms. Honestly, why we're not concerned about where Cain is and what happens to him after this really beats me. If I were her, that would be all I'm thinking about, but she just books it up to her rooms. Someone is in her room. Thankfully, it's Nehemia. If it were anyone else, I feel like this would have gone entirely differently, but it's Nehemia. She sees that she's like gushing blood from her hands. And if tonight wasn't weird enough, Nehemia grabs her hand and starts chanting. Not in the common tongue, not in EOA, something else entirely. Celaena doesn't even know what it is. The word marks start glowing all over Celaena's skin, and then she passes out. Chapter 43, Celaena wakes up and she looks at her hand, totally healed, no word marks, and she's like, did I just have like the most bonkers nightmare of my life? But then she looks over, Nehemia is in her room and basically tells her, the bite was poisonous, it would have killed you, I'm glad I was here. Nehemia starts asking questions, rightly so. In my opinion, I think Celaena probably should have been asking a lot of questions too. But Celaena lets Nehemia have her moment, and Celaena ends up telling her everything about the competition, about her real identity, and about the serial killings, and basically about what she just witnessed down in the secret passages. And then Nehemia does something really, really sweet. I don't know how else to describe it, but something about it just like really warms my heart. But she comes up to her and with her finger like draws or whatever on her head, I don't know, but she gives her a name and she said, I'm giving you the name Alentia for when all of your other names are too much to bear. I'm not gonna cry, but like I don't know why, but something about that moment is just so special to me and I love that moment. And then they talk late into the night just about everything and about life. They open up to each other. Nehemia reveals, yeah, I know more about word marks, obviously, than I originally let on. So flash forward to the next morning. Calaine and Nehemia are best friends again, but we're actually going to be in Calaine and Cale's point of view. They're walking together, honestly probably on their way to training, and Calaine is highly debating telling Cale everything, and honestly if it were not for the fact that she would have to give away the fact that there are secret passages coming from her room, she definitely would have, because she knows he's looking for the killer, and so it would make sense for her to tell him that it's Cain. But she decides that it doesn't really matter anyways because she literally killed the Ritterak. She killed the creature. Cain doesn't have the creature to do his dirty work for him anymore. So they're walking through the hall on their way to wherever they're on their way to, and they run into the King of Adarlan. Chapter 44. Something dangerous lurked about him. It was an air of death that she'd felt standing before that black void summoned by Cain. It was the stench of another world, a dead world. No one knows where the king has been for weeks. And if that's not weird enough, things get weirder. We jump to Cale's point of view. Later that day, not only did the king come back after a long time being away on a mysterious mission, but he came back alone. He claims that everyone with him, every single person with him, had died, and he was the only one who survived. And this is not sitting right with Cale. Like, he knows that clearly something is going on. I think this is the first moment where we really see Cale start to second guess the morality of everything that he does, but it occurs to him that he feels bad for Calaine. He feels bad for her if she loses and has to go back to Endovir, but he also feels bad for her if she wins because she will have to serve the king, not only in a similar capacity as him, but in a worse capacity as him. Chapter 45. It's a couple days later and Nox and Calaine are training together. And Nox sees the scars on her hand because although it was healed and she's not poisoned anymore, it still left a mark. And Nox is like, what's going on? And she goes, listen, I know who's doing the murdering. It's way worse than you could imagine. No one's getting out of this alive. Like, you need to escape. He wants more information, but she won't say anything. And Nox somehow just starts piecing stuff together, and he's just like, you're not a jewel thief. Somehow he pieces together that she is Calaine Sardothian, and she tells him about the Ritterak. She tells him about how it's been summoned by Cain and how Cain is making it a point to murder his competition, and she begs him to leave. She's like, you need to go because I don't know who's next and no one's safe. And Nox thanks her, and in the night he escapes. And he actually does get away. Chapter 46. It's probably the shortest chapter in the whole book. The final duel is today. The day has finally come. Dorian is nervous about the final duel, and frankly Calaina's fate, because he does not want her to go back to Endovir, but he's also scared about what her years in servitude to his dad will look like. And Calaine reveals that not only is she terrified of losing, but for the first time she's realizing that she's equally terrified of winning. Chapter 47 starts in Calaine's point of view. She gets her hands on the goblets and she dumps the poison into Calaina's goblet. Let's jump to Calaina's point of view. I think it's really funny how her main concern at the moment is that this duel is outside in the dead of winter, because honestly I'd probably be annoyed with that too. Then all the important men are there. What I think is really funny is Calaine actually starts picking out multiple men in the crowd is men that she's done some dirty jobs before for in the past when she was an assassin. And they're very nervous to see her, and she decides to keep a mental note of who all there is nervous to see her that she's done jobs before, because she realizes that could come in handy in the future if she ever needs to do some blackmail. And then Nehemia is here as well because she knows about the competition now, so she decides to invite herself and attend the final duel to support her friend Calaine. She does have this really beautiful large wooden staff made from eelway wood, and it's very culturally significant in eelway. It's like a weapon, I guess. She makes the evil king uncomfy with that one, and I love it. So there's going to be 3 matches, 1v1, 1v1, then the 2 winners are going to face each other, and the winner becomes the king's champion. And something to emphasize here is they are not supposed to play to the death. This is emphasized in the rules multiple times. They're just supposed to get them into a, what's that called? Like a death position, like the blow would have killed them, if that makes sense. I'm sure there's a more official term for that. A life-threatening position, that's how you know they won. So Cain goes against the other champion first, one of the other final 4 contestants, and he takes him out within 3 minutes. And he literally has magical strength. So are we surprised? The book literally said that whoever the Ritterat killed, Cain would gain all of their strength. So he has the strength of like 4 or 5 different champions now. 5 including himself. Now it's Selena's turn and she's going against Grave. As she's going to the ring, Cale offers her his sword, which is a very big deal because the pommel does actually represent his territory that he was supposed to be lord over, and it is a sensitive topic to him, so the fact that he offers that sword is a really big deal. But before she accepts, Nehemia steps in and she offers Selena the eelway staff. Let it be with an eelway weapon that you take them down. Let wood from the forest of eelways defeat the steel of Adarlan. Let the king's champion be someone who understands how the innocent suffer. So Selena takes the eelway staff and she faces Grave. Chapter 48. Selena, she breaks his nose. She whacks him on the head. She sweeps him off his feet. She has this man down in 2 minutes. She bends over and in Grave's ear she goes, "By the way, my name is Selena Sardothian." Epic moment. So before the final fight between Cain and Selena, they decide to make a toast to the soon-to-be victor. So Cain and Selena are given absolutely no time at all. They basically take swigs of their goblets at this toast and then they immediately have to jump into dueling each other. Even Dorian challenges his father at this point and says like, is this really a good idea? Like, aren't you gonna allow them to rest for a couple minutes? But the king's like, no, like, let's do this right now. So the duel starts and off the bat, Selena notices her vision is getting kind of blurry. So Cain is coming after her insanely quick. Move after move after move. He is just non-stop, full force going at her. Her body just slowly starts to feel like more heavy and heavy and heavy to the point where she mentally knows what move she needs to do, but she can't quite do it fast enough. Then Cain, who honestly, without the help of the strength of 4 other dead champions, he was already a pretty strong guy. At this point, obviously, she's picked up on the fact that she has been poisoned. Cain is also very aware that she's been poisoned, and at this point, he's kind of toying with her, like he's intentionally dragging this out. In chaos, we're gonna jump to Dorian's POV. He wants to stop it. He knows something is wrong. He's not quite tuned into the fact that she's been poisoned, but he can definitely tell something's going wrong. But if he interferes at all, he just can't. Then we jump to Cale's point of view, and this is where stuff gets really, really weird. He is actually right outside of the ring, so he can hear the entire conversation, and he hears how Cain is baiting Selena. Something that really rubs Cale the wrong way, though, is what Cain is saying about her family. As far as we know, Selena's been found almost frozen to death in a river when she was 8 years old, but Cain is talking about how did it feel to wake up in between your dead parents? Like, very intimate, very traumatic details about her life. And Cale wants to know how Cain knows all of that. And then we jump to Selena's POV, and she's accepted the fact that she's gonna die. And then she begins to hallucinate and sees all of these, like, creatures. I don't know how else to describe it, but in the book, Selena basically says she's looking at the army of the dead. She just knows that they've come for her. Chapter 49, Dorian's point of view. Selena is screaming her head off like he's never heard her scream before. At this point, he's picked up on the fact she's definitely been poisoned. She's definitely hallucinating. He sees Nehemia kind of move from the crowd, and she goes near Cale, like on the outside of this dueling ring, and she starts chanting in what he assumes is Eelway, and something he notices that no one else really sees is that underneath her cloak, she's tracing weird symbols in the air with her hands. Selena's POV. Who else comes to save the day than the ghost of Queen Elena? She comes, obviously visible to only Selena. She basically says to not be afraid. She scatters the army of the dead, and she starts to like slowly pull and siphon the poison from Selena's body. Selena stands up and she's ready to go. She's weak, but she's no longer poisoned and she's no longer hallucinating. Chapter 50. Cain seems nervous, and rightly so, because she was supposed to be down on the ground and not get back up, and here she is seeming totally no longer poisoned, and she's ready to fight again. He starts making killing blows because he's panicking, and he's ready to fight to the death, even though, if you remember, the rules are not to fight to the death. Blow after blow after blow, Selena takes Cain down, finally, and Selena wins. This is honestly such an exciting moment. If it weren't for how stressful the whole poisoning thing was, I'd be more excited right now. But honestly, it's just like something about the way this fight scene is described really stresses me out. Sarah J. Maas is the only author who can write fight scenes that I actually enjoy reading, so I'm not going to be able to actually summarize fight scenes for y'all. If you want a good fight scene, you just got to read the book, but from me, you're going to get the summary, which is Celaena wins. The crazy thing is that the king is actually so angry. Like, he wanted Cain to win. Celaena wins, but she's clearly not okay, so Dorian immediately calls for a healer to come and take her to the infirmary. In the chaos of everyone coming towards Celaena, no one sees, except for Chaol, that Cain has pulled out a dagger and he lunges for Celaena to finish the job that he started. Chaol sees this and he stops Cain by running his sword through him. And Chaol kills Cain. Fun fact, although Chaol has done a lot of the king's dirty work and he is responsible for a lot of deaths, he's never actually had to make the killing blow in his entire career. So he's a little traumatized, and also on top of that, he interfered. And that is not good, especially for this competition. The rules are very clear. So Chaol disappears. He gets out of there so fast before anyone can even process what in the world just happened. And then something, I think I actually forgot to mention this earlier, so my bad, I'll mention it now. Dorian comes up to Celaena, and while they're waiting for the healer to come to take her to the infirmary, he mentions that there was a mark on her forehead that glowed when she was having hallucinations. Where have we heard of glowing marks before? Great. Remember it for like 5 more books. And obviously a lot of people saw the mark burning on her forehead, so a lot of people have a lot of questions, but she can't even answer them. She doesn't even know what it was or why it was there. In this very chaotic moment, we're gonna actually jump to Caltaine's POV. She is absolutely fuming because not only did the poison fail, but now Dorian is over there like coddling Celaena, being like, are you okay? I was so worried about you. And basically, like, it made the situation 10 times worse for her. She comes over to Parrington and she's like, you said this would work. Like, why didn't it work? Fix this. And Parrington does the worst humanly slimy, crusty thing he could do. What's in your hand, Lady Calaine? And basically, in a very public manner, draws attention to the fact that she's holding an empty vial that contained the poison that poisoned Celaena. Loudly accuses her and says, you poisoned her, like you interfered in this competition. And then calls for the guards to take her away to the dungeons. As she's getting dragged away, clearly being like, excuse me, no, like, Parrington told me to do this. I didn't just decide to do this, which, like, honestly though, she kind of did already set upon the idea to Celaena a while ago, so in my opinion, she's not like 100% the victim here, but for Parrington to just completely be like, come on. And then what's crazy is as she's getting dragged to the dungeons, she overhears the Duke Parrington turn to the king and say, I told you that she would do anything to get a crown. Duke Parrington knew the whole time, and he played her the whole time. He knew that she was in love with Dorian and she would do anything to become the queen, and he manipulated her and he used her for this entire book. Calaine may have not been a good person. She may have even been a bad person, but what Parrington did was just evil. And frankly, she did not deserve that. Chapter 51. Dorian's talking to his father the next day, and he's basically like, okay, so what's the punishment for Chaol? And his dad's like, what do you think should be the punishment for Chaol? And Dorian's like, straight up, I think that he did a noble thing in protecting your champion, so I don't think he should be punished. And the king's like, okay, fine, we won't punish him. So that's at least good. Chaol's still gonna have to deal with the trauma of executing his first kill or taking his first life per se, but at least he's not gonna be punished by the king, so that's at least something. Then Dorian's like, alright, so when are you gonna send Celaena her contract as your champion? And the king is literally like, I'll think about it. Part of me really just wants to send her back to the salt mines of Endovir. Clearly, like, with the Elway staff and everything, like, she was just trying to prove a point. And basically says to his son, like, maybe I'll try to prove a point to you, even though you won the competition, to not actually let you win. What a slimy man. So we're gonna jump to Celaena's point of view. Understandably, covered in a lot of bruises, and she's got a lot of injuries. But Nehemia comes to visit her, and of course she is speaking in the perfect common tongue, and she has no EOA accent. She basically confesses a lot to Selena, including the fact that she healed her during the match. If that wasn't already crazy enough, I mean, we already kind of figured that based on the whole like chanting and hand symbols thing, but then she also reveals that she also saw the Queen Elena's ghost, and she also saw the army of the dead. Then she confesses that she knows not only what word marks are, but how to use them and like tap into their magic, because it's not like normal magic. It still works even though magic doesn't exist. It's a different type of magic, but she knows how to tap into that power. And although Cain had been summoning all of the marks, she had been banishing the marks. So remember the chalk marks that we saw under Selena's bed that had her freaking out? Apparently those were made by Nehemia, and those were marks of protection. And then Nehemia shares one last thing. And what's wild is that you remember when she called her Lentia and she drew a symbol on her forehead? So you can assume that the symbol that glowed on her forehead during the duel was the one that Nehemia had drawn on her, but it wasn't. Nehemia actually said that was not a word mark. To her knowledge, she didn't even know what that mark was. Like, she had no clue what it was. But it seemed to be like a part of who she was. It didn't seem like someone had drawn it on or created it. Like, it seemed to be a part of her being. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I think it's definitely a really weird connection to draw, but the connection was made. Sarah J. Maas never does anything by accident, so you gotta pay attention to those little weird things like that that come up. Chapter 52, we're so close. The next morning, Dorian comes to visit, and Dorian's an absolute mess, and he feels horrible, and he apologizes to her about 1,000 times because he did nothing. Like, he just sat by and he didn't do anything. Frankly, he couldn't do anything, but he feels sick about it. And Selena's upset by this because, first of all, she's like, no, there was nothing you could have done, so like, stop making this about you. And then second off, him being this upset has her really concerned, because that means that emotionally he's starting to choose her over the crown. Although thankfully he didn't act on it, he was definitely contemplating it, and he has regrets. So she kind of sees this all as a recipe for disaster. So she has some hard decisions to make. But for the time being, let's jump to Duke Parrington's POV. He knows what word marks are, obviously. I think you could have assumed that because Cain was his champion, but he knows what word marks are. But he also has no clue what the mark was that was on Selena's forehead. He also sensed the army of the dead, so he didn't see them, but he sensed them. And he's actually with the king right now, and they're kind of talking about everything that just happened, and the king was like, you know what, I am going to give the contract to Selena to be my champion, but we are definitely going to be keeping a really close eye on her for the time being. And then the king congratulates Parrington on successfully manipulating Calaine. So the king has been in on it from the beginning, like every step of the way. He's known what's going on. He was a part of what was going on. Slimy, crusty men. Honestly, it even gets crazier. So the king says, were you using the power on her? No, I relaxed it recently as you suggested, the Duke replied, rotating the obsidian ring around his thick finger. Besides, she was starting to look noticeably affected, drained and pale, and she even mentioned the headaches. Remember we talked about how Calaine always had headaches? She turned to opium to get rid of them. That was Parrington's fault, using whatever the power is. The treachery of Lady Calaine was disturbing, but he had known of Parrington's plan to reveal her character, even to prove how easily she'd adapt to their plans and how strong her determination ran. He would have prevented it. Such a public revelation only brought about irritating questions. It was clever of you to experiment on her. She's become a strong ally and still suspects nothing of your influence. I have high hopes for this power. Looking at his own black ring. So Parrington has a black ring, and the king has a black ring. No one else has these black rings. That's not true. Cain had one. Clearly, we're noticing a pattern that all of these horrible, horrible people are wearing these black rings. Does it feel like a cult yet? It should. It really should. Cain proved the physical transformative effects, and Calaine proves the ability to influence thoughts and emotions. I would like to test its full ability to hone the minds of a few others. So these skeevy men have been plotting for a while, and they're continuing to plot. And it is absolutely insane. And if this is as far as you've gotten in the series and you don't know what happens in the future, it's insane. You're in for a ride. When the scandal has been forgotten and the assassin is busy with my work, we'll make Calaine an offer she can't refuse. Then the king tells the duke to, on an entirely different note, chill with trying to use Nehemia as a weapon against Ilwe and basically threatening to use her as a hostage, and basically says it's attracting too much attention. Chapter 53. So it's 1 full week later. Selena is still basically bedridden, but she's reading a lot and she's resting and she's healing a lot. But she still has not received a contract from the king. It's revealed that Dorian comes and reads to her every single night. They're basically a couple at this point, and I'm here for it. I love it. You know, the assassin and the prince. What a great combination. But this particular day, Dorian's not there. Cale comes to visit Selena, and this is the first time she has seen him since everything went down. This is where stuff gets really tricky, because she's basically realizing how much she missed him. She went from seeing him every day to not seeing him for a week, and she's basically talking about how hard that was for her and how worried she was for him. And all of a sudden she wants to make sure that he's okay because she knows what it's like to take lives. She does it all the time for work, despite being a very sensitive person and having a very strong moral compass. And so she decides to tell him about her first experience making her first kill and trying to make him feel better, and actually succeeds a little bit. You know, doesn't heal him on the spot, but they have a bonding moment and they both realize that they're both actually pretty similar. Like, there's not that much that separates them. And I feel like this is also a really big moment where Cale's prejudice towards her like really starts to thaw and melt away. It's about time. On his way out, they give each other a cute little hug as friends. They basically decide that they're going to be friends since they're going to have to work together from now on, with her being the champion, or at least will be when she gets her contract. While they're like hugging each other goodbye, and Selena's realizing like, oh shoot, like he means a lot more to me than I thought he did. They realize that Dorian's been in the doorway watching this whole time. So Dorian has come to tell her, congrats, you're getting the contract, you're officially the champion once you sign. And she's like, great, fantastic, looking forward to it. But then again, like, she's not really. She's just looking forward to her freedom at the end of 4 years. And then Dorian goes to give her a little smooch, since they're basically lovers at this point, and she like dodges him. She says what they both know and have been putting off. He's a prince, she's an assassin, and as soon as her 4 years are up, she's leaving, and she's never looking back, because Adarlan has never been and will never be her home. Basically said that she would never consider staying or consider looking back, not even for Dorian. And so this is where they low-key break up before they really ever even started dating. I mean, even if they would have, it all would have been extremely secret. But she just basically says, you know what, there's not even a point in pretending, because this is just never gonna happen. I have a lot of respect for her for that, but it also, just a little bit, just, ugh. Chapter 54. Cale comes to visit Selena and makes a joke about like, oh, Dorian's not in here, like whatever. And she's like, oh no, we ended things, like I ended things. And she basically says her reasoning, and he was like, well, it's about time. Like, I figured that would happen, so it's better you guys ended it now rather than got too involved and too serious and then someone's heart got broken, you know, that wouldn't be good. So Cale is suspiciously relieved, but then he has this thought. He's afraid that 4 years of friendship with Selena won't be enough, because he realizes that he will also be staying in Adarlan, and when she leaves, she will also be leaving him, and he will never see her again. And he's starting to realize that 4 years feels like a lot shorter of a time than he thought. And the Grinch's heart grew 10 times that day. Later that night, after Selena knows that she's safe, she goes down to the passageways, and she goes down to Queen Elena and King Gavin's tomb. She thanks the queen for helping her in siphoning the poison and helping her win, but then says, okay, like, I became the champion, that's one thing you asked me to do, so what's next? Like, why exactly did you need me to become the champion? Honestly, Elena just gives her so many non-answers, and I could try to decipher them and get into all of them with you, but they're mostly going to be recovered and explained more in the next book, so I'm not going to waste your time with that for this book. You can subscribe and stay tuned for the Crown of Midnight videos, where we'll go a little bit more into what Queen Elena wants out of Celaena. But for now, she just gives her a lot of non-answers. And then chapter 55, which is the last chapter of the whole book. Celaena is before the king, ready to sign her contract. But there are some rules. There will be no questioning on your part. When I tell you to do something, you will do it. I don't need to explain myself to you. If you somehow are caught, you will deny any connection with me to your last breath. Should you fail any of my tasks, should you forget to return, you will pay dearly. If you do not return from the mission on which I sent you, I'll have your friend, the captain, aka Kale, killed. If you fail to return after that, I will have Nehemia killed. Then I will have all of her brothers executed. Not long after that, I will bury her mother beside them. Do not believe I am not as cunning and stealthy as you are. And that sets the pace for book 2. When Celaena is officially the King's Champion. That is the end of the entire recap of Throne of Glass. Stay tuned if you want to see my entire recap of Crown of Midnight. But for now, you should enjoy some of my other Sarah J. Maas related videos, and I will see you next Monday for a new video.